So hey guys, how are you all? Welcome to. So we are back with a brand new movie on what if Naruto got unexpected big harem with Yakumo, but before we start, be sure to subscribe to our channel and like this video. Now let's begin the story. Starting off, the Godem was interrupted from her trademark face in the paperwork beauty sleep when a Junin arrived at the hospital in critical condition. While the time it took the Hokage to arrive was minimal, the man's injuries were so extensive. The intensive surgery required made Lee's injuries during his first Chunin exam resemble the results of a minuscule slap fight from Academy Kunoichi hopefuls. Luckily, Tsunade once again displayed her impeccable medical talents, saving the man from either early retirement from his shinobi career, or an even worse scenario: death. 3 hours and a throbbing headache later, she returned to her office and noticed her paperwork stack bearing a much larger quantity than ever before. As a fanatical worshipper of heavy procrastination, Tsunade spent the majority of her week with drinking, gambling and more drinking. Although the impulse to escape and restart her exotic indulgences was tempting to an almost maniacal degree, the Godem managed to suppress her urges of debauchery and took a seat behind her desk. Tsunade always found this viewpoint the best when gauging her daily paperwork's total amount. It shouldn't have come as a surprise, but the old blonde woman couldn't help her astonishment when discovering how unforgiving ignored stacks of growing papers can become. 500 papers. What I do for a drink right now. Despite her initial reluctance, Tsunade finished her work in record time. Afterwards, the Godem finished her cup of tea, kicked off her shoes and leaned back in her chair, allowing herself a well-deserved break. Moments before she closed her eyes, there was a loud knock at the door. Tsunade groaned. "Why me?" Giving herself a moment to straighten up, the Hokage addressed the person on the opposing side of the door. "Enter." The door opened slowly, revealing Shizune. "Tsunade-sama, the feudal lord of Bird Country, Toki-sama, is here to see you." The Hokage's assistant then walked to her stationary position at Tsunade's side. Entering the office was Toki in her glasses wearing best friend, Shishima. Tsunade smiled at the both of them. "Welcome to Konoha, Toki-sama. Is there anything I can do for you today?" Bird Country's feudal lord took a seat, with Shishima occupying the other. "Hokage-sama, I have come to Konoha because of the upcoming Chunin exam. According to rumors, this test shows much more promise than any other since the exam 3 years ago." Tsunade raised an eyebrow. What is it with people asking about the Chunin exams already? She couldn't help but find it strange, seeing as how the promotion-obtaining test was 3 months away. 1 week prior, another feudal lord came about the exact same thing. And what a strange conversation that was. Flashback. "It's a pleasure to see you again, Harunaheim. What brings you to the hidden village of Konoha today?" Tsunade asked with a smile. The princess from Greenery Country smiled back towards the Hokage, with her bodyguard Yorinoju standing behind her. "Well, Hokage-sama, I've heard about the upcoming Chunin exams and I wanted to get an early look at your shinobis." She paused for a moment. "After all, if it wasn't for the genin squad you sent to aid us 3 years ago, my country would most likely be at war or destroyed." Clearly noticing the slip-up, Tsunade decided not to comment. "Strange, it sounds like she came all the way here for one genin. But that doesn't make sense. She's a princess for crying God's sake. Guess I'll have to find out." The Godem put her hands together, her fingers interlocked. "Is there any genin you'd like to see in particular?" Almost instantly Haruna replied, "Uzumaki Naruto." Surprised by the speed of her own quick answer, the princess attempted a cover-up, even though Tsunade would have to be deaf not to have heard the slight desperation in her voice. "As I'm sure you remember, Uzumaki Naruto and his teammates were the ones who saved my life when those 3 were after me. During the mission, his skills, as well as his kindness and bravery have led me to believe that he is the best kind of shinobi whenever Greenery Country will require your assistance." The Godem raised an eyebrow. "If that's the case, then why come here about 3 months in advance? As valuable a shinobi as Naruto is, I would also like to learn about your other genins as well. During the mission 3 years ago, I noticed that your genins were more than capable of handling enemy shinobi that were much stronger, as well as having a major advantage in experience." Haruna spoke sternly. A tone of voice she reserved for political meetings. "After seeing how potent your genins are, I decided to visit Konoha personally to inspect your shinobi, for the sake of Greenery Country, of course," she added quickly. Other than seeing Naruto, the rest was a complete lie. Ever since she requested Naruto to remain in her country, Haruna hasn't let a day go by without the blonde boy on her mind. Although she never voiced her opinion out loud, she's well aware that her feelings for the Kyuubi carrier far exceeded those of friendship, or even a crush. Haruna felt one emotion towards Naruto. Love. Satisfying, joyful, beautiful, till death do us part love. At the tender age of 19, the princess was starting to look for a suitable husband. No matter where she looked or who she talked to, only one person seemed desirable for marriage. Uzumaki Naruto. She had heard rumors that Naruto had left the leaf with his perverted sensei, Jiraiya. Haruna was hoping that the blonde would give her a visit during his time away from home. But alas, luck wasn't on the princess's side. She waited patiently for any information regarding the boy who restored her hope. 3 years later, her faithful lingering paid off when she heard another rumor that Naruto would be returning home shortly. Taking this chance, Haruna immediately set out for Konoha, fully intent on giving Naruto the same request as before. Only this time, she'd attempt a different approach. The princess plans on spending more than plenty of time with the blonde, getting acquainted with every nook and cranny that Naruto's personality is made of. Likes, dislikes, dreams, favorite foods. Haruna wanted to learn it all. Afterwards, on the day of her departure, the princess planned on asking Naruto once again to stay with her. She could only pray for the blonde's agreement. The Godem weighed out her options. Greenery Country had always been very supportive towards the leaf. With Haruna's father before, and for the past 3 years Haruna herself. Not to mention the possible profit coming along the princess's approval. An entire country hiring shinobi exclusively from Konoha was a business opportunity Tsunade would rather not pass up. Satisfied with the answer, the Hokage addressed the princess, "Very well. I'll allow you the examination of our genins, and whenever Naruto comes back, I'll let you know." She looked at Haruna and noticed the girl showing signs of drowsiness. Even with her fatigue, the princess grew a wide smile at Tsunade's arrangement for meeting Naruto. "Well, I'm sure you're tired from the long trip here, so I'll provide an escort to where you'll be staying. Azumo?" The shinobi appeared in front of Tsunade. "Please escort Harunaheim and her bodyguard to the greatest leaf." Azumo nodded and started escorting Haruna and Yorinoju to the Hidden Leaf's finest hotel. Moments later, the three were out of the office. For the first time since the meeting started, Shizune spoke up. Tsunade-sama, I was also involved in the mission to protect Harunaheim. There's something you should know about its conclusion." Tilting her head in confusion, Tsunade stared towards her assistant. "What is it?" Shizune put a hand under her chin, sporting a thinking expression. "Before we left, Harunaheim had actually requested for Naruto-kun to remain in Greenery Country with her and assist in their repairs." Shizune paused, solely for dramatic effect. Although truthfully I've always thought she wanted him around for other reasons that only Jiraiya-sama would appreciate. She finished with a slight blush on her cheeks. Immediately understanding the implications, Tsunade shrieked, clearly disliking the idea of such notions towards her surrogate little boy. What? End flashback. Tsunade-sama. Tsunade blinked, noticing Toki's concerned expression. Unwilling to give her village the impression of being led by an idiot, she cleared her throat, getting back to business. "So, you're here for the Chunin exams. I'm assuming you want to scope out the participating genins ahead of time. Is there a certain team you're looking for?" Tsunade briefly wondered the possibility of this meeting's resemblance with last week's continuing till the end. The Godem ended up dismissing the chance as being too unrealistic. Especially since the team that saved Toki and her country consisted of Kakashi, Neji, Tenten and Naruto. Holy shit, no way. I am actually very curious about a shinobi who goes by the name of Uzumaki Naruto. He helped save Tsushima, Bird Country and me from the Watari ninja 3 years ago, and he also stopped me from going down a dark path of revenge. She paused to collect her thoughts, unaware of Tsunade's shocked expression. "He's a wonderful person, and if your other genins are half as great as he is, then I promise that our country will only hire shinobi from Konoha and only Konoha. I request that you allow me to inspect your genins, as well as Naruto." Tsunade re-raised her eyebrow. So, she's using the "I'm also interested in other genins" card. As much as I'd like to question her further, the risk of losing a country's trust over such a minuscule detail is too great. I'll just have to see what happens. As inwardly opposed as she seemed, the Godem also had to inwardly smirk. The son she never had 2 female rulers who came to the Chunin exams 3 months in advance to see him. No Konoha shinobi could claim that kind of attention as a genin. "Alright. I'll allow you to examine our genins. Currently, Naruto is away on a training trip with Jiraiya." She paused to examine the feudal lord's face. Toki's mood sank considerably upon hearing the news. However, he is rumored to return home any day now. Whenever he arrives, I'll be sure to let you know. Tsunade finished, basically giving her the same agreement as Haruna. With that, Toki brightened up. "Thank you, Hokage-sama." Calling Azumo, the Godem had him escort Toki and Tsushima to the same hotel that Haruna and Yorinoju were residing. Happily reclaiming her break, Tsunade leaned back in her chair, a smile plastered on her face as she took a nap. At least the village won't be boring for a while. The girl patiently waited as the woman kept looking through the wide selection. The woman was inches away from grabbing a blue, only to jerk her hand and continue pondering her decision. This ongoing scenario has continued for nearly 30 minutes and the girl could easily admit to feeling a level of boredom approaching insanity. So bored, in fact, she'd spent the past 10 minutes playing around with the bandages that covered her left arm from the shoulder down to the wrist. She watched the woman almost pick up a purple, but in a last-ditch effort she placed her hand by her cheek, which had a strange red paint mark. The girl sighed. Enough was enough. While she was normally a patient person, she easily felt her tolerance level slipping quickly and knew it was time for mending the crisis. The girl cleared her throat. Excuse me, but is there anything in particular you are looking for? If so, I'm sure I can help you find it. The woman looked at the girl, then back at the blue and purple flowers, then quickly looked up at the girl in recognition. While the girl wasn't a village celebrity by any means, the numerous bandages she constantly wore, as well as their arrangement, give her an easily identifiable appearance belonging to one person. Sea Country's former pariah, Isaribi. Well, actually, yes. My mother's birthday is coming up and I'd like to give her something special. While I've already bought her a present, I'd like to get her a nice flower with a note added telling her what I purchased for her. Isaribi smiled at her. I think I've got an idea. So what present did you buy her, if you don't mind me asking? Lounging in a nearby chair, Yamanaka Ino was pretending to read a magazine, sharing Isaribi's earlier boredom. Not only was a slow day like this bad for business, but also started getting on the blonde girl's nerves. Taking a deep breath to calm herself, Ino glanced towards Isaribi. A small smile appeared on her face as she remembered just how much the former fish girl's life had improved since arriving in Konoha. Once Anko, as well as Naruto, Ino, and Shino gave their mission report to Tsunade, the Godem took Isaribi to the Hidden Leaf's medical facility for treatment. What she saw astounded her. It turned out that the areas consisting of green scaly skin on Isaribi's body were also responsible for the strange fish-like transformation the girl's capable of. With the kind of rarity such a condition warranted, especially since Yamato was the only similar case, despite being a completely different scenario, even Tsunade was hard-pressed at finding a satisfactory conclusion. After several failed attempts at fixing the problem, the only solution became the removal of the scaly skin from her body, regardless of its location. For the next couple months of Isaribi's hospital stay, she underwent countless operations to cure her condition. Unfortunately, not everything turned out fine and dandy, as good news and bad news was presented to her following the final operation. The good news was that the operations were a success. Isaribi could no longer transform into the strange fish-looking monster and the green skin has been completely removed. To top it off, due to her body's adaptation to changes made from her experimental status, she was able to retain her ability to breathe underwater. Even with such positive results, the bad news still hit hard. To remove that monster-like skin that ruined her childhood, the medic Nin had to use special equipment that simply carved it out. While it did the job, the equipment also caused every inch of her green skin to be covered in scars, forcing Isaribi to continue wearing her bandages even after leaving the hospital. Ino was brought out of her musings as she watched the woman, who looked strangely familiar for some reason, answer Isaribi's question. No, it's okay, I don't mind. My mother is the head of our clan, as well as a single parent with 2 children. That, of course, makes her very busy, so I decided to give her a break. I bought her an all-expenses-paid trip to the hidden village of Sand for 2 months. She always told me how she'd like to lounge around there sometime, so I decided to make it now. Kiba and I are old enough to take care of ourselves for a while anyway, and I could temporarily fill in as clan head during her stay. Kiba? Of course. That's his sister, Inuzuka Hana. Ino couldn't help but feel like an idiot for hardly recognizing a sibling from one of the Rookie 9. So, you'd like a flower that tells your mother you love her with a note attached telling her about her gift? Isaribi walked over and picked up a flower while Hana nodded. While I'm sure you wanted to buy something flashy, I think a single rose of love would be your best bet. It may be the most common, but she'll definitely know what it means, and that'll probably mean more to her than a strange-looking flower with a foreign name. Hana simply smiled and agreed, while sending Ino a look which clearly said, "Where did you get this girl? She's good." The Yamanaka girls smirked. A year and a half after arriving to Konoha, Isaribi was finally released from the medical facility. Sure enough, she was assigned to live with a guardian while adjusting to life in the Hidden Leaf, or so Tsunade claimed. In a move nobody expected, the Godem assigned Mitarashi Anko custody of the former fish girl. Put a little thought into the situation and it wouldn't have sounded so far-fetched. The both of them shared a connection to a certain snake trader, as well as understanding the feelings of loneliness better than most. While Naruto himself would have been an alternative choice, the demon vessel had already left with Jiraiya long over a year prior, effectively kicking him out of the running. There was another reason why Naruto's apartment wouldn't have made the greatest living quarters for her, but Tsunade never put it into account. In a different village with the completed operation, Isaribi wanted to begin a new life, one far away from violence and death. Although Tsunade and Anko wondered if she'd become a shinobi, she quickly refused any offer without leaving any room for arguments. Unluckily for her, this decision didn't have a good start. Due to her appearance, any job she attempted to apply for was easily dismissed. No matter where she tried, whether it was a restaurant, a shop, or something in between, she simply couldn't get hired. Some would say they had enough people, while others didn't sugarcoat their words and simply denied her the chance because of her appearance. When the familiar sadness from before started settling in and she was almost ready to finally give up, she came across Yamanaka Ino, one of the very few people she recognized in the village. After a few minutes of small talk, Isaribi asked her about any job opportunities, as well as her extraordinary luck in their pursuit. Without saying a word, Ino grabbed her hand and took the black-haired girl to her family's flower shop. Once inside, she gave her parents a brief overview of the situation and bingo, Isaribi entered the workforce. Watching her conversing with Hana, Ino felt extra proud of Isaribi's achievements. During her initial days working in the flower shop, she didn't have an inkling of the necessary communication skills necessary to sell a flower to even the most die-hard plant lovers, let alone someone who didn't even want to be there and was only considering buying their special person a flower because someone told them to. It wasn't the bandaged girl's fault. Sea Country as a whole actively shunned her at every given opportunity, never allowing the girl a chance at learning from a teacher. Truth be told, she couldn't read or write or correctly perform many other academic subjects people her age should have mastered years ago. When the Yamanakas realized this, the family decided to be the teachers Isaribi never had. Ino and her father Inoichi would help her communication skills for the shop, while Ino's mother, who luckily had some experience in teaching, instructed Isaribi in academics. During time away from the shop, Anko would usually assist in the teaching as well, or to be more precise, dragged academy teachers out of their homes in Thria, persuaded them to help Isaribi with her long overdue learning sessions. They never refused. Ino stood up and walked towards Isaribi when she noticed the black-haired girl preparing to write the note addressed to Hana's mother. Even with her progress in literature, one of the Yamanakas always worked alongside Isaribi during any of her shifts, looking over her work, as well as checking her reading and writing in the case of any notes such as this one. As much as they've grown to like her, the flower shop was still a business. A misspelled word or meaning in a note on one of their flowers could ruin someone's special occasion. Just as Isaribi finished the note with Ino's help, the door swung open revealing two teenage girls who ran towards the Yamanaka girl, breathing heavily. Isaribi had to refrain from shaking her head. These two belonged to a small gossip organization led by Ino that was always intent with staying up to date with Konoha's juiciest information. They most likely came as quickly as they could to report something stupid. Ino, we've got some hot news. Yeah, you're not gonna believe it. Tilting her head in a questioning manner, Ino asked, what is it? Though she was somewhat curious, the two phrases those girls just used always came before gossip, whether good or bad. She wouldn't anticipate too much out of this one. The guy who defeated Hyuga Neji in the Chunin exam finals, Uzumaki Naruto, came back. Yeah, he just came here through the northern entrance moments ago. Isaribi couldn't believe her ears. Did she just hear what she thought she heard? Naruto finally came back. The boy who understood her pain, who prevented her from becoming a monster, and gave her the chance at living the life she could only imagine, has returned. She clearly remembered their time spent together in Sea Country like it was yesterday. When they first met, he saved her from Kabuto's old teammates, Yoroi and Masumi, and was kind to her even then, as he offered to help the girl with her groceries. The first time in Isaribi's life anyone tried to help her, and the girl brushed him off once she noticed the forehead protector stating his profession as a shinobi. Her next encounter with the blonde boy came totally unexpected. The regret she felt from refusing Naruto's aid was gnawing at her conscience, making her feel even worse than usual. Needing a break from the village, she took a swim in the ocean, one of the few benefits her experimental state provided. Being allowed to relax freely in the massive body of water was like a second home to Isaribi, away from the hateful glares and insults. While she was underwater, the bandaged girl noticed Naruto, who was under as well, moments away from drowning. Without hesitation, she rushed to his side, and with a little mouth-to-mouth she succeeded in giving him the air he desperately required. After bringing him to her home, Naruto was extremely grateful and constantly commended her for the chivalrous act. Once again, she tried to separate herself from the boy, yelling at him to be left alone. Their next meeting had the girl believing her life couldn't get any worse. Naruto, the only person who treated her better than dirt, saw the monster-like transformation that totally demolished her life. Although the shame Isaribi felt at the time was enormous, she was surprised to discover that Naruto didn't hate her at all. If anything, his care for her grew, and his desire to prevent her from becoming a real monster only increased. In the end, Naruto's words and actions bypassed her psychological defenses, especially after Anko flat out told the bandaged girl about the Kyuubi vessel's secret. At that moment, Isaribi knew. Uzumaki Naruto had stolen her heart before the girl realized she even had one. Her behavior during the time in the medical facility served as a testament to her feelings. No matter how painful, how hopeless she became during the operations, thinking about Naruto always gave her the strength to continue. The dream of being in his arms, telling him how she felt, as well as reciprocating the kindness and warmth she'd already received never failed to fill her heart with joy. Knowing that he would always accept her, regardless of the operation's outcome, constantly restored any lost hope during her recovery. Obviously, it came as a great disappointment once Isaribi's release from the medical facility arrived to find that Naruto had left the village for years. Even so, she wasn't about to let the life he'd given her go to waste. As much as she wanted him now, Isaribi would gladly wait for years, even decades for the boy, as long as they got their happy ending, healing their shared pain together. Clearing her thoughts on the love of her life, Isaribi shot a look towards Ino that clearly stated, "I am searching for him now." Hearing about Naruto's return was definitely not what Ino had anticipated. She glanced towards Isaribi wondering how she'd handle the news. She immediately understood the girl's gesture and nodded with a smile on her features. She'd take care of the order, no problem. From their extensive time as co-workers, not to mention the time spent during the dark-haired girl's lessons, the two girls became close friends, and the Yamanaka could easily tell that Isaribi wanted the Naruto bad. If it was anyone else, Ino wouldn't understand how they could be interested in someone like Naruto. But with the bond they formed in Sea Country, Ino would have only been surprised if Isaribi didn't feel anything towards him. Being the bandaged girl's best friend, the blonde girl felt obligated to ensure that Isaribi ended up with her beloved. A welcome home party for Naruto should do the trick. She began rubbing her hands together while scheming the perfect way to make that work. Hana smiled at the news. "I know him, he's one of my brother's friends." She was also slightly surprised towards the gossiping girls. The Yamanaka flower shop was near the southern border of the village. If Naruto truly returned from the northern gate so recently, how could they know? Apparently, Ino's lackeys had been skillfully arranged all over the village to deliver the latest gossip at a moment's notice. She put that useful bit of knowledge to the back of her mind, with a non-existent chance of future retrieval. As Isaribi walked towards the door, Hana's next words forced her to pick up the pace. Thinking nothing of it, the Inuzuka added, "He was pretty cute too. There's no way you can refuse this time. Your flames of youth's desire to burn brighter will no doubt it. Once you put that on, your youthfulness will achieve a whole new level. My adorable student is right. With this, the youthful passion within you will never be surpassed." Gai-sensei. Lee. A female's voice hastily interrupted before the duo began their youthful hug fest. "For the last time, Gai-sensei, Lee-san, will you please stop offering these to me?" The two directed their focus to the side and met the annoyed gaze of a certain freckled girl. The former kunyachi of the hidden village of Star, Hokuto. In her hands was an outfit of green spandex that's an impeccable facsimile to the ensemble that gave the bowl-cut duo a fraction of their notoriety. Shortly after Naruto defeated the corrupted Akahoshi to save the village's youth, the hidden star never remained the same. What should have been a change for the better took a turn for the worst. With the village's star destroyed coupled with the loss of their leader, regardless of his evil intent, the village fell into a state of anarchy. Nearly every adult was attempting to become Hoshikage by whatever means necessary, and because of Akahoshi's treachery, any balance of trust within the village was at an all-time low. Humanity's darkest vices were clearly displayed each passing day in the star, as betrayal became an everyday occurrence. Even the children had to sleep with one eye open as yesterday's friends became today's enemies. Murders were committed without punishment and riots started at the drop of a hat. During one of these incidents, Hokuto was severely injured by an idiotic shunin who figured an easy win would be a nice way to flaunt his skills. While some got wiser in the pursuit of power, others took the alternate route and attempted any idea to achieve their goal, no matter how stupid, since the girl was only a genin and such a victory proved nothing in the eyes of the adults. Although it only took a few days to recover, that time allowed Hokuto, as well as her friends Sumaru and Mizura, the realization that their beloved village was on the verge of collapse. Knowing a better life lied elsewhere, Hokuto's friends assisted in her escape the day following her convalescence. As much as she wanted their accompaniment, Hokuto knew better. Becoming Hoshikage was Sumaru's dream, and he was far too stubborn to allow something like total anarchy to get in the way. He'll remain in the village till the day he dies, and Mizura would stay by his side as the voice of reason when his attitude begins swaying into dangerous territory. Nonsense. Unlike the others, Lee and I know true fashion when we see it. Gai-sensei's right, Hokuto-san, the flames of youth take appearances very seriously. Hokuto giggled at their antics. If there's one thing she loved about Konoha, it's the overload of unique personalities nearly every individual in the village seemed to possess. When she arrived in the leaf, she was quickly escorted by the Anbu to the Hokage, where the former star Kunoichi informed Tsunade of her situation. After taking a brief moment of thought, the Godem asked her if she'd like to remain in Konoha. Hokuto nodded happily and asked if she could become a shinobi. Unfortunately, there was one slight obstacle in the way of her request. In the Hidden Star Village, their shinobi used a meteorite that fell from the sky which had its own powerful chakra as the main method for training. Harnessing such power, however, came at a price. Training near the star forcibly strengthened one's chakra, but it also had a significant drawback of causing negative side effects to the body. An overload of chakra in the body is the most common, being lethal enough to kill. While it was true that shinobi who were able to master this form of training became very powerful, the large number of deaths in exchange for the minuscule number of such fighters was a trade-off far too great to grant the Star Village the kind of power they desired. Hokuto herself was one of the many star shinobi who participated in such a practice. Luckily, she had never gotten ill or injured from the training, but after a diagnostic Tsunade ran after hearing her story, the brunette was getting near the point of exceeding the amount of chakra her body can sustain. The Hokage informed her that if she continued using chakra in the staggering amount that an average shinobi would, she'd probably die in less than a year. With this in mind, Tsunade allowed her a couple days in the village to think it over. In a village full of strangers, Hokuto found herself bored out of her mind, simply thinking over everything that happened. Her musings were cut short, however, when she was approached by Tenten, one of the very few people she actually recognized. After a bit of small talk, the two girls went off to the training ground of Team Guy where Hokuto finally met the man with the gigantic eyebrows, Maeda Guy. Flashback. And that is why I can't be a shinobi anymore. Although she spent the first 20 minutes with the members of Team Guy in light conversation with Tenten and Neji and learning about the flames of youth from Guy and Lee, Hokuto eventually told them about her situation. The group spent the next couple of minutes in silence. Who would have guessed the Star Village was under such perilous turmoil? Or that Hokuto's chances at continuing her career as a shinobi were practically slim to none. Following what seemed like an eternity, Guy spoke to the former Kunoichi, putting his youthfulness on a temporary hold as he used a more serious tone reserved for rare occasions such as this one. Hokuto-san, how good is your taijutsu? Please answer honestly. The girl had a small smile on her face and answered sheepishly, well, to be honest, I was the best taijutsu user in our entire age group. Hokuto didn't like to brag, so she can only hope her answer seemed humble enough. Whether her answer satisfied the man or not, Guy's expression didn't change. If there is a way to continue being a shinobi, how hard are you willing to work for it? Off to the sides, Lee and Tenten had to restrain from smiling at the scene, knowing exactly how this would end. Even Neji was slightly enjoying it, although he kept any happy expressions well hidden. All three could tell they'd have another good friend in the very near future. The former star Kunoichi stared him in the face, her determination never faltering. As long as it isn't achieved through negative means, I will do whatever I can. Guy smirked, pleased with the girl's answer. Tell me, Hokuto-san, would you be interested in becoming a taijutsu specialist like Lee? End flashback. Once the idea was presented to Tsunade, she agreed instantly, saying that Hokuto's situation had turned out for the best. As the unofficial member of Team Guy, Hokuto spent nearly all her time under the rigorous training that Maeda Guy was famous for. Said training only increased a few months after, once Lee, Tenten, and Neji passed the Chunin exams on their second try, giving the youthful Junin extra time to focus on her taijutsu. Although training under Guy and Lee was by far the most difficult experience of her life, the results from nearly 2.5 years under the bowl-cut Junin's wing were astounding. Sure, she could hardly use ninjutsu or genjutsu and she was still a genin, but with taijutsu that's already near Junin level, Hokuto has provided the village populace with yet another concrete example for the undisputable fact that Maeda Guy was the epitome of attaining unrivaled taijutsu. Not only that, but the training had also given her one of the sexiest bodies in the village. With such a rigorous workout, Hokuto kept her slim figure, while gaining a lean, muscular body. The kind that could only be achieved through excessive physical training. The kind of body most dieting women aimed for. Her muscular, trim figure had the average man literally drooling in her direction. Hokuto gasped while looking at her wrist, pretending there was a watch. She exclaimed in mock disappointment. Well, look at the time. As much as I hate to refuse yet another offer to wear such fine clothing, I think we should all go and see Tenten-san since her mission just ended a couple hours ago. It was a game they played. The bowl-cut duo would always try to convert her into a lover of green spandex, and she'd find whatever means possible to weasel her way out of it. At first, Hokuto believed they were serious about the change in attire, since she always was considered Maeda Guy's second apprentice. Around the 40th time they asked, however, the former star Kunoichi realized they were only having fun with her, so she then decided to play along. As strange as the massive eyebrow pair are, Hokuto considers both of them great friends, and wouldn't change a thing about them. Things simply get entertaining when Guy and Lee are involved. Not wanting to ruin the fun, Guy didn't miss a beat. Very well, we'll each go home to clean up and then meet up to find Tenten and Neji. Dismissed. The Chunin and Genin both gave mock salutes, then each headed to their respective homes. On her way back, Hokuto sighed. As fond as she's grown of the leaf, the freckled girl always felt as though something was missing. Something in the form of a blonde-haired, blue-eyed shinobi bearing 3 whiskers on each of his cheeks. Although it sounded silly, but during her escape to Konoha, Hokuto found herself looking forward to the sight of Naruto more and more with every passing moment. Just when exactly did she gain these kinds of feelings for the blonde boy? Was it during their first encounter, when he instantly forgave her when she attacked him and accidentally squashed his food? When the blonde immediately rushed to help her friends when they'd gone to retrieve the star themselves? Could it have happened when she noticed how happy Mizura became from using the cane that Naruto made for him? Was it when he defended Sumaru's mother, knowing he was going against orders, all for her sake as well as her friends? Could it have been the time he saved her life, along with the rest of the villagers from Akahoshi? Or was it after they separated, and she had begun to realize just how much she enjoyed his company? Whatever the answer was, it didn't really matter at this point in time. While she couldn't say she loved him, she can admit to turning down any guy who asked her out, all for the opportunity to have a chance with Naruto upon his return. She'd even learned to cook a mean amiguri at Yukon, since she remembered how much fun the two had while eating it when they first met. In Hokuto's eyes, there was only one guy she saw herself dating, and that was Uzumaki Naruto. While Lee and, to a lesser extent, Neji were both close friends of hers, any chance of going further with either is akin to the probability of Uchiha Sasuke giving his brother nothing more than a slap on the wrist whenever their next meeting occurred. In other words, it would never happen, in this lifetime or the next. Arriving at her destination, she shook off her thoughts and went inside. I guess I'll just take a shower, and have some instant ramen. The guy who owns this place has enough in here to last an eternity. Little did Hokuto know, that she would be on the receiving end of the surprise of her life much sooner than she'd ever imagined. Yuhi Kurenai enjoyed the great outdoors, it was no secret. Day in and day out, whether the climate was sunny, raining, sleet, or snowing, it never mattered. The red-eyed woman did her best to take advantage of whatever outside condition nature presented, all the while enjoying it to the fullest. Those who've actually bothered listening to the gossip Ino's henchmen have provided the village would have heard all kinds of reasons to explain Kurenai's adoration for the wilderness. Sure, some remained in the realm of normalcy. Rumors stating that her love for the outside was hot-wired in her DNA weren't too far-fetched, but when the village began hearing that Yuhi Kurenai only loved the outdoors because she was homeless and slept in a box, it became apparently obvious that such information got out of hand. Such rumors, of course, were false. Kurenai was simply an outdoor person. There was simply nothing more to it. Her apprentice, who was walking beside the Junin, did not. Like her sensei, this came as no surprise, especially since her immensely pale skin served as a dead giveaway. If that wasn't enough, the fact that her only outdoor time was spent training, immediately followed by a hasted retreat back inside, should nullify the doubts of any non-believers. With that in mind, it wasn't unusual when she halted her steps and questioned her instructor. Kurenai-sensei, where are we going? We're heading to the training grounds, Yakumo. Standing a few inches taller than her instructor, Yakumo raised an eyebrow at her sensei's obvious lie but refrained from commenting. If they were heading for the training grounds, shouldn't they be walking back home to the training grounds, instead of marching around Konoha for no apparent reason? Call her a weirdo, but that was Yakumo's take on the morning's situation. When Kurenai requested to reclaim her position as Team 8's instructor during her mission report regarding Yakumo, Tsunade accepted her request, on the condition that the truth behind the death of the Kurama girl's parents remained hidden from the public. Similar to the Sandame's law concerning the Kyuubi, this was done solely for her protection. Nothing would benefit if such information were to spread throughout the village. Yakumo's life was already difficult enough. A village-wide discovery that she killed her parents, no matter if it wasn't really her, would accomplish nothing more than add yet another burden to her already heavily troubled shoulders. And that couldn't have been more accurate. When Yakumo resealed the Idu monster inside her, she did it in order to save Naruto and Kurenai by shoving her emotions aside during the heat of the moment. Once her anxiety from the battle died out, and the realization of the day's events came crashing down, the pale girl found herself unable to cope with the revelation of how her parents truly died. Her self-loathing only increased further because of it. She hated the frailness of her own body. The physical condition that caused her chances of becoming a genjutsu user to come into question. Yakumo despised the emotional angst she went through just because the goal placed upon her by her clan became unreachable. She loathed how her own ignorance caused her to place such blame and hatred on Kurenai and Sandame, who were only trying to help her because she was so weak. She was disgusted towards herself for nearly killing Kurenai and Naruto from her own misguided malice. Above all else, the majority of her self-hatred came from the results of the fire in the Kurama main branch's mansion. If it wasn't for her own uselessness and weakness, her caring parents would still be alive. Reaching an intersection of dirt roads, Kurenai's eyes darted continuously from left to right. I wonder where he is. I'd better keep my eyes open. After a few minutes of unsuccessful surveillance, the Junin stopped looking. Unable to find what she sought, Kurenai pressed on. Noticing her instructor's demeanor, Yakumo slightly narrowed her eyes. It was obvious their little walk around the village was a disguise to locate something. While she hated being left in the dark, especially outside, she refrained from commenting. The Kurama girl's next few months were spent locked up in her room, completely isolated from the rest of the world. In her mind, Yakumo believed that leaving the mansion would be the first step in repeating her mistake of harming those she cared for. The girl hardly ever ate, and whenever she did it was only bits and pieces. It also served to greatly reduce her sleep, on the few nights when she actually allowed herself any. The ridiculous notion stemmed from her own belief in being unworthy of such a luxury. Obviously, such behavior wouldn't go unnoticed. Considering what happened last time, Yakumo was burdened with immense clan pressure. The other Kuramas knew they had to be very careful when assisting their heiress. Initially, Unkai, who'd been serving as a grandfather figure to Yakumo, had instructed the others on giving her time alone to deal with such traumatizing information. Not only that, but one of the primary reasons she lashed out before was from the entire clan monitoring her every move. Make the wrong decision. Regardless of wonderful intentions, and Yakumo might have begun rethinking along the lines of revenge, and that was the last thing anyone wanted. With that in mind, the next 5 months were spent in this manner. In other words, that time was spent watching Yakumo's health gradually deteriorating with minimal assistance. The other clan members gave her food and water, but other than that, the Kurama heiress alone time was just that, alone. Any exceptions were few and far between. Namely, the rare instances when Unkai or Kurenai would pay her a visit. The two wanted more opportunities to visit her, but with the majority of Unkai's time taken away with duties as the temporary clan head, and Kurenai, who had a genin team of her own plus an increased mission count from the sound invasion, time was a luxury neither had. One night, Kurenai decided to give Yakumo a surprise visit. She hadn't had the chance to see her former student in quite a while and knew this would brighten the Kurama heiress' day. What she saw, however, was something the Junin could never forget. Flashback: opening the door to Yakumo's room, Kurenai noticed the girl seated on the floor, carrying something in her hand. On closer inspection, Team 8's instructor easily identified the object as a knife. Instead of being pointed outward, however, the blade was pointed towards herself while her hands trembled immensely. Clearly understanding her student's intentions, Kurenai ran towards the Kurama heiress, hoping against hope she'll intervene on time. Earlier that morning, Yakumo thought about everything that's happened in her life and once again, pinned all of the blame on herself. The girl hit rock bottom, and such self-hatred caused her to make the decision. Everything would be better off if she were no longer around. With her plan set in stone, she waited until the other clan members who checked up on her accomplished their task and left. After she confirmed being totally alone, she picked up the knife. Even though the brunette believed she deserved death, Yakumo's hands were shaking furiously, and she couldn't help but hate herself even more at this hesitation to do what she believed was right. The Kurama girl was too lost in her thoughts to have noticed the opening door. Without further delay, Yakumo closed her eyes and abandoned her reluctance while she quickly shoved the knife into her heart. Or at least, that was the plan. Upon opening her eyes, she noticed a hand grabbing her own, halting her self-destructive action similar to her previous suicide attempt. Unlike last time, instead of a painting, monster's hand that stopped her, it was the hand of Yuhi Kurenai. Kurenai easily disarmed the girl, tossing her knife to the side. Afterwards, she knelt down and grabbed Yakumo by the shoulders. "What the hell do you think you're doing? If you honestly believe this will help others, you're sadly mistaken, Yakumo." The Kurama girl was frightened. She failed in her attempt, and the only thing she succeeded in was pissing off her former instructor. In all her years of knowing the Junin, she'd never seen Kurenai-sensei so angry. The moment Yakumo began to look down in shame, she felt Kurenai rise and was dragged up with her. The Junin couldn't believe Yakumo would go this far. She would have continued shouting at her former student, but when Yakumo was picked up off the floor, Kurenai gasped. How could she have overlooked this? Not only did the bags under her eyes make her insomnia obvious, but the girl was unbelievably skinny. Kurenai had already heard from the other Kuramas about Yakumo's eating habits, or lack thereof. Even so, it shouldn't have been that much. Unfortunately, that wasn't all. Once Kurenai had taken a look at the girl's body, surveying how weak she appeared, the Junin noticed small cuts on Yakumo's arms that were obviously self-inflicted. She did her best to fight back the tears at the sight. To think that such physical and emotional damage could befall her precious ex-student was simply unacceptable. Kurenai narrowed her eyes. This had been going on for far too long. She once again put her hands on Yakumo's shoulders, only this time the contact was gentle. She began speaking softly to the girl, while maintaining a trace of sternness that effectively left no room for debate. Yakumo, once you learned the truth, I believed you needed time alone to deal with this and I respected your privacy. But after seeing this, well, I'm sorry, but I can no longer continue to just stand by and watch you destroy yourself. You're going to get help and I don't care if I have to drag you there kicking and screaming like a baby. End flashback. As the pair turned a corner, Kurenai continued her lookout. Taking a quick glance towards her student, she noticed Yakumo's tongue rapidly rubbing the inside of her cheek, as if attempting to remove some unwanted food stuck in her mouth. What is she doing? She wondered. A few seconds later, the realization came and she had to suppress a giggle. Silly girl. Someone had a little too much peanut butter during lunch today. The Junin smiled at the girl. I'm so glad I stopped her that day. I don't even want to imagine what would have happened otherwise. Luckily, Yakumo never did kick and scream like a baby. Nor did she have to be dragged, which was a great relief for Kurenai, who was afraid of the embarrassing scene such childish actions would trigger. The red-eyed Junin's initial destination was the medical facility inside the village, where she immediately requested extensive psychological counseling for Kurama Yakumo. The request was answered quickly, and the Kurama girl immediately began spending the bulk of her time in intensive therapy. Her therapist being none other than Shizune. With such a rare and extensive case, Tsunade believed she couldn't afford having anyone less than her protege handle Yakumo's situation. Even with Shizune's immense skills, helping the clan heiress was no easy task. With her work cut out for her, Shizune's approach to diffusing the situation was taking matters one step at a time. The first order of business was a much-needed alteration to Yakumo's living conditions. Her home contained far too many haunting memories. Everywhere she looked, everything she touched served as a constant reminder of her unforgivable sins. Coupled alongside her other dilemmas, and it became too much for her to handle. Luckily, the plan to move Yakumo came at a most opportune time. In less than a month prior, Asuma and Kurenai had gotten engaged. Coincidentally, with their eventual marriage on the horizon, the red-eyed Junin was preparing to move in with her fiancé and his nephew, Konohamaru. Immediately following the sound invasion, the Sandame's grandson was placed in the custody of his last remaining relative, Asuma. Hearing about his uncle's engagement, Konohamaru was ecstatic on having his aunt Kurenai in their home permanently. With that in mind, Shizune formulated a plan. After all, the only thing that could have made the kid happier than having his mother figure moving in would be a potential big sister as well. As Shizune expected, convincing Asuma and Kurenai to permit Yakumo into their home was unproblematic. All she had to do was ask. When she easily persuaded the Kurama clan into allowing their heiress to leave, it certainly did come as a surprise. With the clan's desire to regain their former strength, effortless agreement was the last thing Shizune expected. She figured there'd be one hell of a brawl before such a request was taken into consideration, let alone agreed upon. In actuality, Shizune's explanation to the Kurama clan regarding Yakumo's problems was all they needed. Hearing about their heiress' second suicide attempt took the fight right out of them. They'd always cared about her. Even during the incident 3 years ago, those feelings never changed. Unkai and the others did what they believed was right, both for her and everyone else. When Shizune recommended moving Yakumo, they conceded. The Kurama clan members knew that it too was the right thing to do. Needless to say, Yakumo wasn't very pleased with the arrangement. Other than Kurenai, she was moving in with strangers, and considering her views acquired during her isolation, that didn't sit well with her one bit. She easily saw herself accidentally harming them, or worse, once they'd gotten close. If that wasn't enough, when she spoke to Kurenai, the red-eyed Junin had all but guaranteed she wouldn't be allowed to spend the majority of her time alone. With enough persuasion from Shizune, Kurenai and the rest of the Kurama clan, Yakumo eventually conceded, marking the first time in Konoha's history a clan heiress moved away from home. Once settled in, Shizune immediately began the next phase of her plan. Yakumo required gaining weight, so the medic instructed her on simple strategies for eventual achievement. The Kurama heiress needed a massive increase in calorie intake, preferably done with low-volume, calorie-concentrated food. Gathering the entire new family together, Shizune recommended they keep a plentiful amount of the following: peanut butter, powdered milk and eggs to use whenever possible. Surprisingly, the Kurama heiress went along with it rather easily. While the powdered milk and the eggs weren't up her alley, Yakumo took a certain liking to peanut butter. Spreading the delicious substance on nearly anything edible and compatible became the easiest way to put a smile on the pale girl's face. Kurenai-sensei, who are you looking for? If Kurenai possessed a Hinata-like personality, she would have released an eep in shock from her student's perceptive question. Doing her utmost in feigning innocence, she turned towards Yakumo with a sunny smile on her features, hiding her embarrassment from her objective's partial uncovering. Why, Yakumo, whatever gave you that idea? This beautiful weather we're having is practically begging for people like us to enjoy it. All I wanted was to share such a wonderful experience with you. Once again, Yakumo narrowed her eyes slightly, though the Kurama heiress didn't bother hiding her amusement. Oh really? So you mean to say you've been looking around frantically for nothing? Well, then I suppose your old age is finally catching up to you, Kurenai-sensei. I'm sorry I accused you of something devious. The red-eyed Junin in question gritted her teeth in annoyance. She was only 31, hardly in any position to be considered old. Regardless of the opposition, otherwise known as common sense, Yakumo and Konohamaru declared it their personal quest to make the adults in their home feel as ancient as possible. You really shouldn't act so innocent, Yakumo. Don't think I didn't see you pilfering Konohamaru's dessert today, Kurenai chided. Now it was Yakumo's turn for embarrassment. During lunch, she quickly snatched the boy's dessert while he was distracted. The little runt asked for it though. Taking the last peanut butter cracker in front of Yakumo, he was practically begging her to steal it. Noticing her student's smile, Kurenai couldn't prevent mimicking the gesture herself while shaking her head in delight. Those two. I swear. With Yakumo's diet underway, the Godime's assistant had one more concern that needed to be taken care of. The Kurama heiress had to regain her confidence. There were no ifs, ands or buts about this. It needed to be done. Unfortunately, unlike her other procedures, Shizune couldn't just make a recommendation and be done with it. The most she could do was advise her guardians to give her well-deserved compliments and include her in any family activities. Basically, she wanted Yakumo to feel valued and wanted in her new home and hoped for the best. Confidence couldn't be forced. It couldn't be fixed with a healing jutsu or over-the-counter medicine. Others may have helped, but the decision ultimately rested in her hands. Yakumo had to believe in herself willingly. Anything else was doomed to failure. Luckily, over time her self-confidence managed to return thanks to a most unlikely source. The Konohamaru Corps. When Yakumo and Kurenai moved to the Sarutobi Manor, the only person the former spoke to was the latter. She tended to avoid the other two and hoped they'd take the hint. Asuma understood, and did his best to give the girl her space while simultaneously providing words of wisdom whenever she appeared to be in need of such a lesson. Konohamaru didn't. The kid was overjoyed to have a Nei-chan moving in at home. As an only child, he was always bored and wanted someone to play with around the house. The Sandame and Asuma could only do so much and they didn't exactly make the greatest buddies for childish games. With that in mind, he bugged her day in and day out to play ninja, while she politely brushed him off. Yakumo wasn't a cruel person, she just wanted to be left alone. A couple weeks of Konohamaru-style nagging later, the Kurama girl caved, if only to make the kid shut up. Befriend one, befriend them all. Yakumo could have used that lesson before agreeing with the little squirt. It was quite unnerving to see a kid with a never-ending snot bungee and a little girl with the most bizarre hairstyle evaluating her. They assessed the Kurama girl, determining her worthiness to be included. Realizing she was Konohamaru's new sister, any reservations toward her value flew out the window. It didn't take long for them to believe she was the coolest thing since Naruto Ni-chan. With her disdain for the outdoors on full throttle, she always ensured any possible activities would be conducted in their own training ground. The Sarutobi Manor's backyard was gargantuan, and with its perimeter completely fenced in, Yakumo felt safe from stumbling into anyone else. The Kurama heiress never had much of a childhood. Her younger years were spent training endlessly in an effort to put her clan back on top. Watching the other children, she often wondered how such pointless games and activities could be so alluring. Playing with the kids felt unbelievable. She'd never guessed something as simple as running to and from others in a game of playing ninja could have brought so much laughter and joy. Her constant frowns were slowly replaced with beautiful smiles further and further every passing day. While she'd never admitted aloud, the gradual changes in demeanor spoke volumes of her feelings far greater than the most elaborate words. During this time of bonding, she got to know the little band of misfits as well. Konohamaru and his aspiring dream of becoming Hokage, Udon and his strange fetish for long division, and Moegi with her growing desire to become a proficient kunoichi. In fact, her conversation with the Corps about dreams was the catalyst for the Kurama heiress becoming Yuhi Kurenai's student once more. When Konohamaru asked about her dream, Yakumo answered immediately. No thinking, no wondering, no pondering for the right words. She spoke from her heart and stated what she truly aspired. Becoming the genjutsu specialist my parents always wanted to restore my clan's prestige. The words stuck like glue. Even if she desired, Yakumo couldn't deny the truth. Resurrecting her clan's fallen grandeur had always been her dream. And she'll be damned before that changed from anything. After a few weeks of intense internal debate, she approached Kurenai and requested apprenticeship under the Junin's guidance once again. Under normal circumstances, success was impossible. The Kurama heiress' physical condition all but ensured that. Fully aware the odds were stacked overwhelmingly against her, Yakumo found a possible loophole. It wasn't absolute, but it certainly was worth a shot. Unlike before, the medical specialist resided in the village. This time around, she'd get proper treatment. Kurenai and Yakumo were brought out of their musings as the reason behind their walk presented itself. Or more specially, they heard him yelling from atop a gargantuan telephone pole, easily alerting the pair to his location. Everyone, Uzumaki Naruto has returned. In another side of the village, the princess of Greenery Country, along with her bodyguard were on their way back to their hotel room after picking up groceries. The past 7 days had proven to be among the most tedious in Haruna's entire life. A non-Naruto week in a foreign village was certainly not the princess's idea of a good time. Glancing over her shoulder, the princess's line of sight darted towards the bag of groceries in Yorinoju's hands. Boring as it was, the outing served a purpose. Other than a massive quantity of Haruna's favorite fruit, Fuyu persimmons, she purchased some of Konoha's finest sake along with the village's greatest instant ramen. Obviously, such a meal seemed totally out of place for a woman of her stature. Then again, public imagery was never one of Haruna's top priorities. Especially since she was parading in the same civilian attire as when she met Naruto, all for the sake of keeping a low profile. Haruna only hoped her hunch was accurate. If she remembered correctly, Naruto's liking towards ramen went far beyond what was considered healthy for a normal, growing boy. During her cold-hearted days, Haruna used an example for her strategy to escape the country figuratively using persimmons. Naruto had other plans. He all but insisted the princess use ramen instead. If that wasn't silly enough, the blonde was seriously amazed by the ultra-fast running ramen. So much so, later on he asked her for the recipe in an effort to provide him a solid meal and effective training simultaneously. Even if she didn't know him that long, Haruna could tell that was a very Naruto-ish request. The thought never ceased bringing a smile to her face. As the pair continued walking, Haruna nearly bumped into a young girl traveling in the opposed direction. Excuse me. I'm sorry. Once both ladies made eye contact, a sense of familiarity settled in. It took no time for Haruna to make the connection. Configuring the appropriate growth adjustments, such as height, weight and longer hair, there was only one person she knew with indigo-colored hair and white eyes. Hinata? Is that you? Seeing the girl's eyes widening in recognition, Haruna smiled. It is you. You've grown so much. Hello, Haruna Haim, she replied. The Byakugan unneeded to see through her disguise. It's been so long. How have you been? Initiating productive conversation, Haruna needed confirmation. She knew perfectly well that Hyuga Hinata had a monumental crush on Naruto just like herself. The subtle question asked casually should get Hinata to spill the beans, assuming it was necessary. I've been doing very well, thank you. In fact, I'm currently in training to eventually lead the Hyuga. Her old blush returned momentarily. She never could get used to speaking of her accomplishments. The past few years had been very generous to Hyuga Hinata. Following Naruto's departure, her relations with her family improved drastically. On occasion, she would spend an afternoon having tea with Neji, with her father conversing of the past, spending time with Hanabi or sparring with either of them. She finally felt happiness in her own home, a feeling that had become totally alien to her. Like Maida Guy, once Kurenai's students became Chunin, she ended up taking on an apprentice. Hinata felt no ill will towards the situation. If anything, she gained a friend in Kurama Yakumo, whose position of clan heiress gave them common ground for beginning a friendship. With the majority of her sensei's time spent for another, Hinata found herself the assistance she needed from her family. While initially shocking, she quickly eased into a training regimen alongside Neji, and the two have shown great improvement under Hyuga Heishi in both combat and diplomatic situations. Really? That's great. Even with her hidden objective, Haruna felt happy for the girl. Hinata nodded. What about you, Harunaheim? I mean no disrespect, but what are you doing in Konoha? Haruna wasn't quite prepared for such a question. Well, quickly, she cleared her throat, gaining lost composure. I came to attend the village's Chunin exam. Back then, the three of you did an amazing job, so I wanted to see how your current genin fared in combat whenever we may need the assistance of shinobi again. She finished beating around the bush. The princess went in for the kill. Speaking of you three, I was wondering Hinata, have you heard anything about Naruto lately? Rumor has it, he should be coming back soon. Noticing the white-eyed girl's shock, Haruna began regretting her words. Son of a bitch. Great going Haruna, you know this girl likes Naruto just as much as you do. Are you trying to start trouble? Naruto-kun's coming back. Hearing news of her primary source of admiration made her stuttering resurface for only a second. Haruna chuckled nervously, well, that's what I heard, didn't you know? The Hyuga heiress shook her head. No, I haven't. Haruna-hime, have you heard anything else about Naruto-kun? Crap. Haruna nearly panicked. She hadn't received the answer she sought, and with a question like that, she wasn't sure how to answer. Before she could reply, Hinata spoke again. I'm sorry, Haruna-hime, I must be holding you from whatever. Raising a hand, Haruna quickly interrupted, Hinata, please don't be so formal. Besides, I'm in disguise. To answer your question, she pointed to Yorinoju. We're on our way back from doing a little grocery shopping. The princess's eyes darted back and forth, and I don't mean to insult your village or anything, but I've been pretty bored these past couple days. Being alone in a village I've never been to is fun for only so long. Hinata smiled. Well, in that case, why don't you come with me back to the Hyuga Manor and we can talk there? I always do enjoy having company, and I could get someone to take your groceries back to where you're staying. Relief shone quickly through Haruna's eyes. That'd be great. Just lead the way. The pair changed direction with Yorinoju following behind, intent for some change from the monumental boredom. Kurama Yakumo felt her heart accelerating. 3 years. After 3 long years, she finally saw him once again. Uzumaki Naruto. The boy's first impression in her mind consisted of a loud, disrespectful kid, totally unfamiliar with minding his own business. A view that only strengthened when he broke into her home. Regardless of the intentions, he had no reason to follow her around like a crazed stalker. That opinion, however, changed soon enough, as he adamantly defended both Kurenai and herself against Unkai. Not only that, but his concern and a surprising understanding of her situation fascinated her in ways she couldn't begin to describe. Kurenai gauged her reaction. The pale girl's slight blush revealed plenty. Perfect. Hopefully, this will turn out nicely. Well, Yakumo, how about we go over there and say hello? She asked, gesturing to the 2 well-known returning shinobi. Her apprentice's surprise lasted for a moment, then ceased as she nodded. He sighed in relief. His travels took him nearly everywhere these past few years, and while there were certain places he'd never seen, none compared to this village. Despite childhood experiences, Uzumaki Naruto enjoyed being home. Watching below, Jiraiya smirked. He assumed his apprentice would pull certain silly antics upon reaching Konoha's interior. Not that he blamed him. His student had certain people awaiting his return and understood Naruto's desire to see them. The old pervert had no idea how truthful the thought truly was. He planned on meeting with Tsunade for the sake of both procedure and his safety, as taking Naruto anywhere before the Hokage's tower was detrimental for his health. Afterwards, he wanted to check if she arrived in the village safely. Jiraiya-sama. He turned around, noticing Yuhi Kurenai and some girl that desperately needed time in the sun. Smiling, he responded, it's been a while, Kurenai. As Naruto dropped down, curious about the commotion below, she bowed slightly, the pleasure is mine. It took the blonde shinobi little time to recognize them both. Kurenai's appearance hadn't changed, making her identity obvious. While Naruto's last encounter with the other female occurred when she was a good deal shorter, he only remembered only girl with such light skin. Kurama Yakumo. Approaching Kurenai's student, he stopped just in front of her. You're Yakumo, right? If so, then wow, you really grew. He exclaimed, arms in the air indicating said growth came from height as opposed to weight. His assessment rang true, as she stood a good 2 inches taller. She beamed at his familiarity, pleased to know he easily remembered her. Thanks, you've grown too. As someone rather inexperienced in speaking to a member of the opposite sex near her age, she wasn't sure what to say. In addition, unlike speaking to Kurenai or Konohamaru, she regrettably didn't feel the same comfort speaking to Naruto just yet. Kurenai noticed her plight as she cleared her throat, getting down to business. We heard you were coming back, Jiraiya-sama, and to be honest, we were looking for you too. 3 eyebrows rose at her statement. Yakumo knew nothing of such arrangements, but figured nothing of it. Perhaps Kurenai-sensei needed some advice from the esteemed Jiraiya-sama. The famous man in question grinned, sending Naruto a look. A certain knowing look. Well, whatever can we do for you? Ignoring the suggestive tone, she responded quickly, lest the old pervert get any ideas. I'm sure you've already heard about this, but the Chunin exams are not only coming soon, but also hosted here. With Naruto still being a genin, I was hoping he and my student Kurama Yakumo could be teamed together for the Chunin exams as she's of the same rank. And I don't mean to impose, but I was also wondering if Naruto could help with her taijutsu, as that's her worst area in combat. Yakumo barely prevented blushing, so that was her plan. Kurenai must have realized her appreciation for the boy that saved her. While Kurenai helped, that was always how she viewed that event. Even when her instructor was reluctant, Naruto didn't hesitate in telling her the truth back then, and she needed to hear that. She figured that must have been the first clue Kurenai picked up. The rest must have come later while being painfully obvious, especially if her teacher went out of her way to make this offering. She wasn't sure whether to thank Kurenai or smack her all the way to next Sunday with a large painting. Naruto turned to face the Junin. You mean a team with me, Yakumo and Sakura? Now the eyebrow raising belonged to Kurenai. You didn't know? The others in your class have already passed their exam. What? His eyes widened, as Naruto experienced a sudden urge to rip his hair out. Taking the exam alongside friends was something he hoped for during the time away from the village. He calmed down quickly enough. Uzumaki Naruto wouldn't be defeated so easily. Laughing, the master couldn't help poking a jibe at the student. Sucks to be you, kid. All your friends will be saving the world while you'll be saving old ladies from dealing with their puppies. Ha 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 ha. Keeping quiet, Yakumo smiled apologetically in his direction. Hey, wait a second. Why can't you train her, Kurenai-sensei? The blonde asked. Placing a hand on her stomach, the Junin smiled. I would if I could, but I'm actually 5 months pregnant. I haven't been able to accomplish any real hands-on training with Yakumo for a while now. The thought of her pregnancy always made the woman a bit intoxicated with happiness. Saying it aloud only furthered additional impact. Both Naruto and Jiraiya gaped at the news. Holy crap, who's the lucky man? The perverted hermit asked, is it Kakashi? There was no doubt in his mind. Only Kakashi, the fanatical follower of Icha, could land a catch as nice as Yuhi Kurenai. Not a chance, she fumed. Both Kurenai and Yakumo glared at the pervert. The latter heard more than enough stories of the porn-obsessed Junin from her guardians. Just the idea of someone as creepy as Hitaki Kakashi living under the same roof and sharing her best friend, instructor's bed was enough to make Yakumo's blood boil. Jiraiya put his hands in the air, hoping to appease their wrath. All right, I'm sorry, I couldn't help it. Noticing the ladies beginning to relax, he smirked. Against his better judgment, the older shinobi asked, was it Guy? The old man gulped as the ladies' killing intent soared to new heights. If matters became worse, Jiraiya was fully prepared to escape their feminine fury alone. He trained Naruto well. Surely the young Jinchuriki could handle himself at their tender mercy. Kurenai-sensei, can I use my genjutsu on him? Yakumo asked innocently. The pervert blinked. Genjutsu? Naruto, on the other hand, began to sweat. He most certainly remembered the pale girl's genjutsu capabilities. If she'd been trained by Kurenai, he'd rather not discover what kind of scenarios Yakumo could force his mind to believe. While his concern for the perverted Sannin was anything but immense, he'd rather Yakumo not extend her anger towards him as well. What was that about training again? It sounds like a good idea to me. Lightening the mood, Naruto saved his ungrateful sensei's hide from a monumental mind raping. Jiraiya sighed, I'm fine with it. The kid needs to stop being a genin anyway, though the decision's really up to Tsunade. No way would he decide for his short-tempered teammate. He preferred keeping his head above his shoulders. Alright, glad to hear it. Right, Yakumo? Smiling, Kurenai was just glad her request went smoothly. If all went well, Yakumo's life could improve even more. The pale girl nodded and was about to speak when another voice beat her to the punch. Naruto? Facing the source, Naruto's fox-like grin emerged full force. Like Yakumo, her appearance was far too unique to forget. Few people had bandages wrapped in such an odd formation, allowing Naruto to easily put a name to the face. Isaribi Ne-chan. The former fish girl smiled brightly towards the Kyuubi container. She couldn't contain her joy as she sprinted towards him, showering the boy with a massive bear hug. Her head resting on his shoulder. Isaribi loved the sensation of embracing Uzumaki Naruto. I missed you. He sheepishly scratched the back of his neck, his other arm touching her back. I missed ya too, Ne-chan. Grinning, Jiraiya noticed the girl's reactions immediately. For reasons unknown to him, both Kurenai's student and this new lady seemed to have feelings for his student. That in mind, he had no intention of interfering. His game plan consisted of getting comfortable, watching and enjoying immensely. Yakumo couldn't help but feel extremely uncomfortable at the sight. Considering the form of endearment he used with her, she doubted he felt any romantic attachments toward the girl, but she was unsure of how to react. Lacking in experience as she was, Yakumo still had a hunch that slugging the hussy in the eye wouldn't help matters in the slightest. She'd think of something. Once they separated, Naruto pointed at her clothes. What's with the apron? She looked down and immediately regretted it. In a futile attempt with her hands, Isaribi quickly covered her apron, embarrassed beyond belief. Oh crap. I was in such a hurry to see you I forgot to put this away. Seeing an opportunity, Yakumo cleared her throat. If it's alright with you, Naruto-kun, could we start heading towards the Hokage Tower now to solidify our bond? I wouldn't want your friend to get in trouble for skipping work. The pale girl's wording ignored, Isaribi wasn't deterred. She started Yakumo directly in the eyes. That's okay. I'm sure Ino won't mind. His face lit up at the mention of a fellow classmate. You work with Ino? How's she been? She's good. Enjoys gossip as much as ever. Isaribi replied, eyes never leaving the Kurama heiress, making Naruto's second attempt at breaking tension a failure. The girls' staring contest continued for a few more minutes until Kurenai spoke up. She had no intention of seeing this escalate any further. Sorry guys, but I'm in a bit of a hurry, so can we get going to Tsunade-sama? I'd really appreciate it. Luckily, her plea apparently did the trick as Yakumo broke eye contact. While she remained near Naruto, her body language towards Isaribi was no longer hostile. Naruto nodded at Kurenai, waving towards the former fish girl. I'll see y'all later, Isaribi-ne-chan. Oh, and say hi to Ino for me. Nodding in return, Isaribi blushed while waving back. Sure. She continued watching their backs until they left her line of sight. On the way, Naruto had the strangest feeling, an indication he hadn't seen the last of such confrontations. It was with extreme annoyance when Tsunade awoke, as her office door swung open with tremendous force. Tsunade no Ba-chan, accompanied by an incredibly loud yell. Tsunade awakened instantly, and while primary instincts screamed for her to introduce the sick, twisted individual that would interrupt her beauty sleep to a massive world of pain, she stopped after taking in his appearance. Blonde hair and blue eyes were already a rare combination inside Konoha's thick walls, but that foxy grin confirmed any doubts. The young man standing before her was Uzumaki Naruto. Elated at seeing the future Hokage back, she didn't bother slipping her shoes back on as she raced to his location. Her arms wrapped around his waist without hesitation, though she took a quick peek upon noticing others alongside him, the shinobi inside her on constant alert. Jiraiya came as no surprise, given his assignment as Naruto's instructor, but she hadn't expected to encounter Yuhi Kurenai or Kurama Yakumo. I missed you, y'all little brat. Their presence didn't really matter either way, as their combined arrival was most likely a coincidence. So instead, her gaze refocused back to Naruto, becoming affectionate. Tsunade found looking up to maintain eye contact with him as opposed to the reverse a most welcome change. He smirked, good, 'cause with my new training, it won't be long before you end up missing the job of Hokage. Tsunade allowed herself a slight giggle, she looked forward to it. Though briefly, Yakumo's face contorted at the sight of yet another woman hugging Naruto as she pleased. But catching subtle actions was second nature to the medical specialist. Tsunade raised an eyebrow at the Kurama girl's gesture. As far as she remembered, Naruto was attractive to foreign women, namely princesses or that Isaribi girl from Sea Country, or that woman. She had yet to encounter a female Konoha native whose care for Naruto extended beyond friendship. Jiraiya snickered at the exchange. He had no idea returning to Konoha would end up so entertaining. Entangling herself from the blonde, Tsunade returned to her desk. Before addressing any of the shinobi present, she quickly raised her hand. Immediately, an Enbu descended beside her. Whispering a message in the man's ear, she dismissed him to carry out the order. Since I know your report will take a while, Jiraiya, I'd like to speak with Kurenai and Yakumo first. Fingers interlocked and resting comfortably at her desk, Tsunade went back to business. The super pervert feigned sadness. You're cruel, Tsunade. You give Naruto a hug, but leave your powerful and wise teammate with no love. She smiled sweetly. Exactly. Approaching the Hokage, Kurenai started the next phase of her plan. Actually, Hokage-sama, Yakumo and I ran into Naruto and Jiraiya-sama earlier today, and it couldn't have happened at a better time. Knowingly catching Tsunade's attention, she continued, as you know, my pregnancy is hindering my ability to properly train Yakumo in improving her taijutsu, which just so happens to be what she needs for the upcoming Chunin exams. With that in mind, we asked if Naruto could help her in that regard and he happily agreed. Not to mention if they're already training together, having them team up for the exams would be most beneficial. So it wasn't a coincidence. Tsunade had to refrain from rolling her eyes. She saw through the red-eyed Jonin's obvious plan a mile away. The medical specialist had been neck-deep in dangerous battles since before Kurenai was in her mother's womb. Did she really believe Tsunade wouldn't notice such a blatant attempt at playing matchmaker? She turned to the men in the room. Is this true? Naruto nodded enthusiastically, grinning in Yakumo's direction. Yeah, I don't mind at all. Me and Yakumo will have a lot of fun together. The Hokage's eyes darted to the Kurama heiress instantly after Naruto stopped speaking. She had little doubt Naruto's awkward wording was unintentional, but Tsunade had to give the pale girl credit. Most people would have certainly missed her well-hidden blush. What did you say about this, Jiraiya? She easily noticed her teammate doing his utmost to prevent laughing. Well, it's not a problem by me. The kid needs to be promoted anyways, so what better way than to spend every day with a lovely lady to make it happen? Tsunade pinched the bridge of her nose and sighed. Of course Jiraiya would have little issue with the idea. She'd have to keep an extra eye on her crystal ball, lest it be stolen by certain perverted old men. Tsunade then focused her attention to the room's sole occupant yet to utter a single word. And how do you feel about this, Yakumo? This will be your first time training without Kurenai's guidance. Slightly alarmed from being singled out, Yakumo closed her eyes momentarily while bowing her head in an attempt to ward off the discomfort. I'm alright with the arrangement, Tsunade-sama. I, could use the change. The Godem said nothing about her behavior. She knew quite well the Kurama heiress' extensive therapy, and if anything, watching Yakumo speak out in any attempt to better herself was always a welcome sign. As I have no objections myself, I'll allow it. However, because this is so sudden, you'll still need both an instructor, as well as another teammate for the exams. Before any other words were exchanged, the same Anbu from before appeared at Tsunade's side with the aid of Shunsen no Jutsu. Whispering ensued once again, ending with Tsunade shaking her head and the masked shinobi leaving the office. Well, Naruto, it looks like I've got a mission for you already. The blonde visibly perked up. Really? Tsunade smiled. Naruto's thirst for missions hadn't waned in the slightest. You remember the princess of Bird Country, Toki-sama? Of course. Does she need our help again? He rarely forgot anyone that impacted his life. Women who changed for the better thanks to his actions tended to remain in Naruto's memory with relative ease. Oh no, she needs your help. You see, Toki recently arrived in Konoha to watch the Chunin exams, but since she's unfamiliar with the village, she wants someone she is familiar with to show her around. Meet up with her at the entrance of the Greatest Leaf Hotel in an hour. Until then, you're free to do as you please. Tsunade neglected to mention Haruna's presence for a reason. Remembering the agreement made with each princess, the Godem sent an Anbu to inform each woman of Naruto's return. While finding Toki was effortless, resulting in this current mission, Greenery Country's princess had been spotted attending a formal lunch with the Hyuga clan. Tsunade knew with nearly absolute certainty that Naruto was Haruna's primary reason for visiting, but the chances of her attempting to befriend one of Konoha's clans wasn't incredibly far-fetched. Greenery Country's shinobi forces were still fairly weak after all, and their princess would most likely hire Konoha's shinobi for a variety of tasks in the near future. She knew Haruna's stubbornness was immense, and interrupting a formal attempt to better her country in the long run for purely personal reasons didn't sound like the wisest idea. Surprisingly, Naruto didn't mind. Well, that could be fun. Tsunade liked his answer. The 13-year-old boy that left the village 3 years prior never would have accepted an obvious D-rank mission without putting up incredible resistance. Clearing her throat, Kurenai placed a hand on Yakumo's shoulders. With that taken care of, I've got some errands to run, so I'll see you later. Be back home before it gets too dark, alright? I'd rather not send Konohamaru-kun to get you out of trouble. Konohamaru? Naruto raised an eyebrow, but didn't comment. Yakumo was taken aback. But Kurenai-sensei, what about our morning training? Naruto already has a mission lined up, so I won't have anyone to spar with. Nothing to worry about, Yakumo, Kurenai calmly stated with a knowing smile. Since you and Naruto will be training together, why don't you help him out on this mission? I mean, Tsunade-sama has already given her approval for you two to team up, so why not start right now? I'm sure Naruto wouldn't have a problem, right, Naruto? Finding the Genjutsu mistress stare unnerving, he nodded. Naruto truly had no issues either way. That's fine. He faced Yakumo. I want to stop by my house first, but you can come too. And don't worry. Toki's really nice too, so I doubt she'd care if Ya tagged along. Naruto couldn't have been any more wrong. She stared into his eyes longingly, desperately craving his warmth. Those cerulean orbs have never ceased to lead her into a mesmerized bliss that only made her never-ending love for him continue its growth. The current moment was no exception. Although her better judgment wouldn't have stopped her anyway, she subconsciously placed her hand on his cheek, stroking the furry whiskers they contain. Sasama. He gazed at the girl with his most tender smile, inwardly believing to be the luckiest man ever from having her affections. There wasn't a part about the girl that he didn't adore. Setting his hand behind her head, he gently stroked the girl's long, orange hair. He noticed the girl's cheeks sporting a brand new shade of red. Her reaction served to make his care for her intensify even further. Sasama. The two simultaneously confessed their unyielding love to one another, as their lips gradually moved closer, intent on getting to know each other. The perfect romantic moment. With no more than an instant until the anticipated lip lock. Sasama. Snapping out of her daydream, Fuma Sasama focused her attention towards her roommate Ran, who appeared quite irritated from her friend's fantasizing. Both seated at the dining room table in their small apartment, she barely suppressed the laugh threatening to burst after watching Sasama smooching the air. Following the events in Ricefield Country, the Fuma clan became Konoha's unofficial spies. With such a close location to the Sound, their findings were ideal for the Leaf, as they kept Konoha up to date with the Snake Sanin's twisted schemes. Jiraiya knew what he was doing when he negotiated the arrangement with Hanzaki, the clan head. Unfortunately, the Fuma clan's espionage days didn't last long. Orochimaru himself made sure of that. Once their investigations dug too close to his liking, the Snake Sanin struck back. It started lightly. During the next few months, clan members were picked off one by one whenever left alone. Once the Sound's most efficient hunter Nin eliminated nearly a third of the clan, Orochimaru sent a message to the Fumas revealing his involvement with the assassinations of their kin. The note also mentioned their rapidly approaching demise and one method to be spared of such fate. Follow the steps of their dead brethren from months prior and join the Sound. Now Orochimaru's message served multiple purposes. First and foremost, the Snake Sanin needed to obliterate any spies in his nation. That much was a given. While he could have simply annihilated them, the traitor had no interest winning empty-handed. Besides, he still needed to learn their prized clan jutsu. Then came the psychological factors. The Fuma clan's memory of the immense hardships and their own near extinction from his actions were still strong. Speaking of memory, they clearly remembered how easily and effortlessly the other clan members betrayed them for power. Kamakiri, Jigumo, Kagero, and most of all, Arashi never showed any contempt during their days in the clan as they always cared for others before themselves. Their betrayal completely blindsided the others, making it all the more painful. With that in mind, the distrust between clan members skyrocketed to enormous proportions. People hardly spoke to one another, and morale dropped to an all-time low. Sasama tried to make the best of things under such hard times, but any kindness was usually ignored or cautiously accepted at best. Running out of options, Hanzaki gave the order to retreat to Konoha. While their arrangement with the Leaf was important, the clan's survival came first and foremost. Konoha would understand, as getting slaughtered threw a major wrench in successful scouting. Sadly, the Fuma clan never made it. Awaiting their arrival on the border between the Land of Fire and Sound were 6 Junin squads and 2 shinobi in the center as the leaders. One was a white-haired youth with insanely shiny spectacles, while the other was some dark-haired kid who must have been around Sasama's age. All of whom sported a forehead protector from the hidden Sound. As 3 Fumas broke formation from the others and stood beside the enemy, the no longer potential traitor's identity became apparent. For Sasama, what happened next was so fast it seemed like a blur. One instant she was preparing for battle and the following moment she was carried off the battlefield by one of her clansmen. Held over the man's shoulder, she recognized him as one of the clan's genjutsu specialists. Days before he'd discussed mastery over a certain invisibility jutsu, which must be how they remained undetected. Even with the rush of battle, Sasama could tell the man was injured. His haggard breath, uncoordinated steps and the scent of blood permeating his body conveyed more than necessary. As the pair were retreating the battle, she spared one glance towards the battlefield. It took all her willpower to prevent screaming on the spot. Calling it a fight or a brawl would be an exaggeration of the highest degree. There was no battle, only a massacre. Feeling her shoulder getting tapped multiple times, Sasama was taken out of her thoughts by Ran, again. The brunette's features held annoyance while her free hand possessed a rice ball. She shook her head. You and your spacing out. Ran's expression softened. Rough morning. You could say that again. A Junin came in this morning in critical condition. We tried everything we could but nothing worked. It was so bad we needed Tsunade-sama to save his life. The Fuma girl sighed, leaning back in her chair. So yeah, rough morning. Ran smiled. Want one? She asked, extending her hand containing the rice ball. Sounds like you could use a good lunch. The orange-haired girl nodded, snatching the food. Thank you, she chirped, happily munching away. Seeing Sasama's bright smile always filled Ran with joy. She preferred the orange-haired girl sporting that particular expression. It fit much better than the traumatized, frightened child carried into her village roughly 2 years prior. She preferred the radiant enjoyment Sasama emitted when the name Uzumaki Naruto sprang up in conversations. The blush, the following smile, and her constant ease to admit feelings for the blonde ninja never ceased to amaze her. Though it brought its own set of problems, although Ran hadn't said it aloud, she too was quite taken by the Uzumaki boy. While Neji and Tenten had no intentions of defending her village back then, Naruto and his sin-atoning friend Menma made damn sure that Ran, Fuki and the other villagers received the protection they deserved. The wall they built not only strengthened the village's defense, but it also brought the people together and supplied them the necessary courage to stand up and fight back. If they hadn't helped, the girl had no desire entertaining the thought. Thinking back, she had to admit the silly way he introduced himself was rather cute. Even if she'd never heard of him prior, the story of Uzumaki Naruto from Konoha did in fact become widely known in her village. Naruto's vacancy from Konoha left her with mixed feelings. Living in the boy's hometown without his presence obviously didn't sit well with her. She wanted him in her life, whether for simple conversations, enjoyable dates or to hear his opinion on new recipes she'd learned from her new job at Ichiraku Ramen. The alternative, however, wasn't any better. Ran treasured her friendship with Sasama immensely, and the idea of their great relationship falling apart because of a guy disturbed her more than she cared to confess aloud. Noticing said orange-haired girl refrain from taking another rice ball, Ran frowned. "I thought you said you were hungry." Sheepishly, the orange-haired girl chuckled lightly. "Well, yeah, but I can't stay too long. I gotta go back to work. Another girl needs to be off early, so I agreed to cover the rest of her shift." Standing up, she paused. "Oh yeah, and don't worry about supper. Me and Sakura are gonna go out to eat afterwards." Ran blinked. How did Sasama know she'd immediately ask about her dinner situation? Perhaps her motherly concern became much more noticeable than she estimated, though toning it down was all but impossible, given her home's inhabitants. "That's all right. I'll just save this for Fuki." Ran's little sister, the apartment's third occupant, would most likely arrive home from the academy with an empty stomach, salivating during the entire duration while she and Ran prepared dinner. A pre-made rice ball seemed like the perfect idea to satisfy her hunger without filling the girl's stomach completely. Rising from her own seat, Ran started gathering objects. "Before you leave, Sasama, could you help me put all this away? I'd really appreciate it." A smile decorating her pretty face, Sasama sauntered to her friend's location. Only stopping at a nearby proximity, she gave the brunette a teasing nudge while she helped pick up the dirty dishes off the table, bringing them to the apartment's kitchen sink. The pair laughed, remaining side by side as they began washing and drying the dishes in pure enjoyment. With their backs facing the apartment's window, neither female noticed the object of their affections leisurely walking by their home beside some pale girl they didn't recognize. The entrance door to the Yamanaka's flower shop was quietly shut. If not for her other profession as a shinobi, Ino wouldn't have noticed. Her eyes peered upwards, noticing Isaribi returning. After taking care of the Inuzuka girl's order, boredom overtook the flower shop once again. Seated atop of the counter, the blonde's legs swayed back and forth, reading the same magazine for the 17th time that day. "So, how'd it go?" Ino already knew the question was pointless. Seeing her scarred friend come back with any expression barring a grin from ear to ear said enough. The reunion between Isaribi and Naruto didn't go so smoothly. Isaribi sighed. Upon hearing Naruto's return to the village, she hoped their relationship would take off without interruption. The former fish girl had little doubt the two of them would make an incredibly happy couple, as she accepted everything about him unconditionally and knew the feeling was mutual. She plopped down in a chair beside the counter, arms resting in her lap, her head peered down. "Not as great as I wanted, no thanks to that other girl." The Yamanaka girl's head shot up like a rocket, her magazine instantly forgotten. "Other girl?" Isaribi nodded. Blinking, Ino had a hard time believing it. "Just to make sure we're on the same page here, you mean to say there's another girl also interested in Naruto who screwed up your reunion?" "Yes, Ino." The former fish girl clenched her teeth. The blonde chuckled at her friend's annoyance. "I can't help being skeptical, ya know. I mean, this is Naruto we're talking about. He's a good guy, but y'all gotta admit, the thought of multiple women fighting for his attention is pretty ridiculous." "Ino," Isaribi warned, fully knowledgeable of her friend's low tolerance towards negativity directed at Uzumaki Naruto. Ino quickly raised her hands in defense. Sorry, it's just kinda weird to me, that's all." She paused. "So who is this girl anyways? Were she and Naruto doing well, ya know?" Ino asked with a teasing smirk. Thankful for changing the subject, the former fish girl still didn't enjoy the implication brought forth from Ino's latest question. "Of course not, and I don't know who that weirdo is." "Well, I do know she's mean. And she's pale, and tall, and ugly, and mean." "Yeah, you already said that." "Shut up, Ino." The Yamanaka Chunin ignored her, eyes closed and began thinking. "A girl with pale skin, huh? Hinata may count, but only someone delusional would consider her mean. Sakura, Maybe? She's not that dark either, and isn't always the nicest person around, but I'm pretty sure she's working right now, so that doesn't hold water. I don't know if this helps, but now that I think about it, I'm pretty sure she was friends with Shino-san's instructor. Ino's eyes snapped open immediately, her search already narrowed down to one. Kurama Yakumo? She likes Naruto? That doesn't make any sense at all. Do they even know each other? So who is she? Her head turned slightly, only to recoil at the lack of distance Isaribi's surprisingly intimidating gaze was from her own face. The blonde laughed nervously. What do you mean? Don't lie to me, Ino. I know you. Who is she? Gulping, Ino recalled the subject of their conversation. Off the top of her head, Yamanaka Ino could only remember a single instance she'd seen Yakumo her entire life. The premier encounter occurred when Asuma requested his students assist moving the Kurama heiress belongings into his home. Upon sight of the girl, Ino immediately sprung into beginning a friendly chat involving her favorite romantic films, cute guys and the 7 critical tips for maintaining superb fashion sense, only to receive a flat stare from Yakumo and a quick statement of, "Stay away," followed by the pale girl leaving the room. Afterwards, both Kurenai and Asuma confronted her about Yakumo's behavior, apologizing on the girl's behalf and explaining that certain unfortunate circumstances led to her demeanor, along with their confidence she'd improve with their help. Ino could see the care and concern the pair had for the girl, especially from Kurenai, with ease. Oh shit. This better not get out of hand. Asuma-sensei and Kurenai-sensei'll kill me if Yakumo gets mixed up in some heavy catfight over some guy. With a heavy sigh, Ino began speaking. The trip to Naruto's apartment proceeded in a dull and uneventful manner. Walking beside the boy, Yakumo frowned. Such a golden opportunity her sensei provided, but her hope of making a good impression seemed like nothing more than a romantic pipe dream. Other than Naruto making a few comments to which she'd respond by nodding with a pretty smile, the walk from the Hokage Tower happened in complete silence. She wanted to speak, she really did. Getting better acquainted with Uzumaki Naruto was one of the few things Yakumo truly yearned for, but the words just wouldn't come out. It'll get better with time. I know it will. It has to. I just gotta get comfortable with him first. Here's my apartment complex. Thoughts interrupted. Yakumo followed Naruto's line of sight to spot the building he'd apparently spent a great deal of his life inside. The Kurama heiress would be the first to admit lacking expertise on real estate, but even she could tell these apartments were simply average quality in comparison to Konoha's other residential areas. It was nothing eloquent but far beyond a nasty, smelly dump of a home. She followed the boy inside, taking note of his brief interactions with the other residents. Where few gave him a polite nod or a kind greeting in response to his own, the majority inside ignored his presence entirely. What struck her as strange was their behavior. Of those ignoring Naruto, none seemed to do so from any desires of being malicious. If anything, disregarding the boy seemed to be a habit, as if treating him like he never existed was the most common, usual, everyday idea concerning how to deal with Uzumaki Naruto. But how could that be? Could this tie in on his own odd understanding to the monster inside her? Yakumo dismissed the thought immediately under the assumption she overanalyzed. So caught up in her own musings, she nearly bumped into him as he stopped in front of a door. Assuming they'd reached his apartment, she casually peered over his shoulder as he worked on the door. How Naruto lived on a daily basis was a subject of great interest to the girl. Without warning, Naruto quickly unlocked his door, opening it with great haste. His eagerness in returning to home sweet home was stronger than he imagined. He wondered if everything was the same. Immediately, he saw something different. Naruto didn't notice the changes in his home's interior. He didn't recognize the new calendar on the wall, nor the altered arrangement of his furniture. His brain didn't bother registering the extra pairs of shoes a few sizes too small for his feet, as well as undisputedly female attire spread all over his apartment floor. No ramen on the table, but instead Amaguriya Yukon. Well within sight, but remained out of mind. His entire focus was towards the obviously unexpected and surprised freckled girl dressed in absolutely nothing save for a towel, leaving little to the imagination. Water leaking down her body. Her incredibly toned body, Naruto failed to recall a female with such an appealing, muscular figure. Naruto-kun, what sort of activities go on at your place? Needless to say, Kurama Yakumo saw the situation in a totally different light. Tension. A word with several definitions, one consisted of a condition or situation of hostility, suspense or uneasiness. A perfect fit, all three terms accurately described what Uzumaki Naruto walked into upon entering his apartment. He tried to make sense of it all. Observing and critically analyzing one's surroundings had been an important piece of training Jiraiya and Nei-chan drilled into his psyche. But try as he might, he failed to think of a single reason that some girl with an incredibly athletic figure would be in his apartment, naked after recently using his shower and acting like she owned the place. The properly functioning key proved the apartment belonged to him. If he'd any doubts, he already would have flung tall but frail Yakumo over his shoulder like a bag of potatoes and ran for it while apologizing profusely. Speaking of the pale girl, she appeared far from pleased. Naruto-kun? Silent all the way until now, Yakumo seemed determined for an answer to the first question she asked since Kurenai left. That they literally encountered him as he returned to the village after a 3-year absence was ignored. "I'm not really sure," he said, eyes still glued to the other girl. "Did someone sell the place during his absence?" Considering there were empty apartments nearby, that seemed like a particularly malicious dick move by the landlord. Ever since she moved in his apartment, Hakoto had often thought of her reunion with Naruto. Of various fantasies, from a romantic arrival with a beautiful love confession to a daring rescue from a dangerous shinobi, to a random encounter in the training fields, sweaty and exhausted along with many other scenarios. She'd never imagined this type of, well actually she did, but those fantasies unsurprisingly didn't involve Naruto bringing another girl home with him. The former star Kunoichi could easily say she'd never dreamed about anything intimate with a female. "Why is Naruto-san in my apartment?" she asked herself. Better yet, why does Naruto-san have keys to my apartment? She felt like dodging the obvious answer. That she'd spent her time in Konoha living in his apartment. That she'd sat on his furniture. That she'd been sleeping so close to his room. That she'd just finished bathing herself in his shower. And found herself with the sudden urge to masturbate. Excluding the towel, she was already naked too. Convenient. Naruto noticed the strange girl's blush continue to grow. She seemed familiar, but Naruto had a hard time placing it. Have we met somewhere?" He noticed Yakumo relaxing quite a bit at that. Weird. Her urge swiftly killed. Hokuto gasped. "You don't remember me, Naruto-san?" She did her best to hide the sadness. Tilting his head and placing a hand on top of it, he thought of her appearance. He knew plenty of brunettes. Her skin color was even more common. But she does look familiar from somewhere, that's it. Her freckles. A rarity among people he knew, he factored in other pieces of the puzzle. Her hairstyle. Amagakure Yukin. Even the way she addressed him. The addition of all parts equaled one possibility. "Hokuto? That you?" Her freckled face now sported an enormous smile. "Yeah, that's right. I'm so glad you remembered after all, Naruto-san." "Who is this?" Back on guard, Yakumo seemed proportionately enthused. "Ah, Yakumo, I gotta introduce you. This girl is Hokuto, a ninja from Hidden Star Village. And Hokuto, this is Kurama Yakumo, my new pupil and teammate. She's really quiet." He stepped to the side, expecting them to give a nod or a bow or a handshake. "Hello." Hokuto greeted, before returning her attention to the only male in the room. "So, this is your apartment too, huh?" "Yeah. Always has been." Trying not to stare inappropriately, he noticed water sliding down her bare shoulders. Looking away was harder than he thought. His growing erection agreed. "It's a little surprising to come back to a roommate." She flushed. "Yeah, I know what you mean. This whole time I thought the last owner of this place died in a fire. At least that's what some of the neighbors said." "Of course they did," Naruto muttered, rolling his eyes. Eyes that didn't roll for long, returning to roaming every inch of Hikoto's body. He shook his head, snapping himself out of it. Last thing he wanted was a new nickname of Jiraiya Light. "Ya think you could put on a little clothes before anything else?" he asked. She didn't have to come back wearing a hazmat suit, just enough to kill the awkwardness. Looking down, she panicked. "Oh crap, I'm so sorry, Naruto-san. Of course, of course." She did her best to disappear without losing dignity, power walking into her room with towel intact. Naruto placed his belongings on a corner, then turned to Yakumo. "So, you want to sit down or something?" "That is acceptable. Thank you," she softly replied. Removing her sandals, she found a comfortable spot on the couch and started absent-mindedly rubbing her toes together. She loved going barefoot whenever possible, enjoying the cold feel of tile on her white soles. Another instance of the indoors kicking outside ass. Yakumo looked up at Naruto, wanting to request he join her. He didn't get it, smiling at her pleading eyes before looking around his apartment and taking in the changes. The dining room table was in a vertical position compared to its usual horizontal, making less width in between it and the same refrigerator from before. His 12-inch television had been replaced with another over twice its size, and his VCR and gaming console had also been switched for better equipment. Yakumo sighed. It was often said that a home was a reflection of oneself. Sadly for her, this altered decor would provide her little insight on Uzumaki Naruto's life. He checked out the kitchen cabinets, curious about possibilities for dinner. Luckily, there was still plenty of instant ramen from before. One of the perks of a ninja village were the ones who prepared meals. He didn't know the jutsu they used, but whatever they did to increase shelf life of many food products was awesome. Snatching a cup for himself, he reached inside for a second before looking over his shoulder. Hey Yakumo, you like ramen? She nodded. It's pretty good. It wouldn't be the same without getting some peanut butter in there, but she didn't feel required to bring it up. Glad to hear it. An enthusiastic thumbs up was sent her way. Ramen's been a favorite of mine for as long as I can remember. She smiled back. Hopefully we can get Hokuto to feel the same in no time. Turned around, Naruto missed her smile turning upside down. Cups placed on the counter, he pulled out a pot to boil water. Minutes later, he sat beside Yakumo with 2 cups in hand filled with steamy ramen and chopsticks between his fingers. I wonder what's taking her so long. Oh well, here ya go. Thank you. She blew into the cup before taking a bite. Naruto slurped up noodles with an overenthusiastic smile. It had been far too long since he ate this delicacy. Oh sweet sweet ramen. Even if you aren't Tucci level, you're always good enough for me. The door opened and Hokuto emerged, towel exchanged for white t-shirt and blue sweatpants. Grabbing a chair from the table, she placed it across from the couch and sat down. Sorry about earlier. Don't sweat it. Naruto waved his hand. We didn't. Yakumo raised an eyebrow before quickly shoving it back down. Good. I was worried you guys would think less of me. Hokuto breathed a sigh of relief. He crossed his arms and leaned back against a soft cushion. Nah, I'm more surprised than anything else. Both at having a roommate and that you're living in Konoha. A dark look crossed her face momentarily. There's a reason for that. Let's say that the Hidden Star Village isn't the safest place to be right now. Clearly he stumbled upon a subject she didn't want to discuss. Well, enough about that. So how you been? Are you still a ninja? She beamed, grateful for the change in subject. I'm good, and yes. I've got to watch my chakra output because of the star, but Gai-sensei and Lee-san have been really good in teaching me taijutsu. You've been training with the Fuzzy Brow team? Naruto asked with wide eyes, sitting up straight. It was nice to hear about those knuckleheads. Knowing them, he guessed their training regimen stayed as intense as ever. She nodded happily. Eccentric as they were easily among the closest friends she had. Yeah. Tenten comes over here a lot too. If you'd showed up yesterday you would have seen her. So that's why, he concluded, taking note of her lean physique. She blushed tremendously. You, like, oh no you don't. Yakumo cleared her throat. Loud. Naruto-san. We should really get going. Our mission will begin soon. Anxiously, she was off the couch and on her feet, a now empty cup of ramen facing them in hand. Holy crap, you eat fast, Naruto exclaimed, Hokuto's potential question forgotten. You should compete with Kakashi-sensei for fastest eater. Maybe we'll even see what's behind that mask. His fist pumped and fire lit in his eyes. Yakumo blinked at his behavior as her lips slightly curved upwards. You're preparing for a mission? I'm sorry, I didn't mean to talk your ear off with my life story. Hokuto couldn't stop blushing, no matter how hard she tried. He laughed. It's no problem, Hokuto. We're roommates now, so there's plenty of time. I'm glad to catch up. Is it dangerous? I heard you've been on some high-ranking missions before. Neji didn't speak kindly of others often, but Naruto was a clear exception. Among words of praise were several dangerous battles, such as the blonde's role in a previous Chunin exam and the retrieval of an past teammate. She hoped he wasn't on his way to another A rank. Not today. Just escort duty for an old friend. Piece of cake. And on top of that, it should be fun. His relationship with Toki may have started rough, but she eventually warmed up to him. He wondered how she and her country fared now. Oh, you're staying in Konoha, right? She asked, doing her utmost not to sound hopeful. Yeah. She's not from around here and just wants a tour of the village. He looked at Yakumo. Ready to go? The pale girl nodded. Naruto grinned. All right, let's rock. Among hotels inside Konoha's walls, the Greatest Leaf had always been the most popular and luxurious. The largest in size and staff, they catered to every need of their customers. As a result, hotel employees had informed the feudal lord of Bird Country of her incoming appointment. While it proved unnecessary, Toki still appreciated their kindness as she made her way to the exit. Opening the door right on time, she quickly noticed a blonde ninja in orange with cheeks full of whiskers. It could only be him. Just as she predicted, he'd grown from short boy to handsome man. Naruto, she called, her face lit up with a smile as she waved. He looked over and a smile broke out. Toki. She appeared just as he remembered, dark eyes and hair and a crown on top, as if the extravagant robes didn't get enough stares. He beckoned Yakumo to follow him. Frowing, Toki took notice of the other girl beside him as they quickly caught up. She thought her request of Naruto and only Naruto made her intentions for alone time clear. Look at you. The last time I saw you, you were about this tall. She raised her hand up to his previous height 3 years prior. He chuckled. That feels like forever ago. And you've gotten so handsome too, she added amusedly, placing a hand on his shoulder. Yakumo rolled her eyes. This was starting to get ridiculous. Admittedly, she wasn't the most social person, but she had been under the impression that Uzumaki Naruto was unpopular with women. And who is this? A friend of yours? Toki gestured to Yakumo. Yakumo jumped. Did her annoyance get noticed? She's my new student, Kurama Yakumo. Naruto said with pride. The more he thought about it, the cooler it sounded to have his own student, especially someone already familiar. You don't mind if she tags along, right? The pale girl bowed. It is an honor, Toki-sama. It's no problem. The feudal lord returned the gesture before turning back to Naruto. So how have you been? I heard you were on a training trip of sorts? Yeah, I was. Ero Sennin taught me all sorts of stuff. He rubbed the back of his head. Perverted sage was your teacher? She asked slowly. Maybe coming to Konoha wasn't such a good idea after all. This person better not have turned Naruto into some sex-crazed beast. I like him for more than that. He nodded. That's what I call him, but he's actually one of the legendary Sannin. Doesn't act like it though. Toki breathed a sigh of relief. You mean Jiraiya-sama? Oh, thank goodness. For a moment I thought, never mind. She shook her head. Best not to dwell on the possibilities, even if a small part of her found it exciting. Enough about me. How about you too? Naruto nodded towards her and Shishima. We've been doing great thanks to you. Toki smiled wide. Everyone's working together to restore the nation to what it was before the Watari took control. It hasn't been easy, Shishima added, but it's definitely worth it. Shall we keep talking on the way? I'm curious to see your home. Of course. Naruto pointed a thumb at himself. I never leave a mission unfinished. Reaching, her hand clasped his own, their fingers quickly entwined. She gave a satisfied look and lightly stepped forward, pulling Naruto along. Taking the hint, he led the four with Toki at his side. He looked down with raised eyebrows and wide eyes. Her handholding came as odd, but Naruto dismissed it as a difference in culture. He'd only known Toki for a week. A few steps behind, Yakumo wanted to go home. What am I doing here? She sighed. Kurenai-sensei devised a simple plan, but within less than a day it already seemed impossible. First Mummy McBandage slut, then a muscle-bound roommate, and now a freakin' feudal lord all want in his pants. How could she, pale and sick and socially awkward Kurama Yakumo, possibly hope to compete? Bitter? Me? Oh, not at all. Yakumo-san, was it? The tall girl in question glanced aside as Tsushima fell in line to walk alongside her. Yes. She replied nonchalantly. Silence resumed before Tsushima smiled at the pair chatting animatedly in front. I'm glad we could meet Naruto-san so quickly. Toki-sama's been wanting to see him for a long time. Yakumo kept her head down, hoping her panic remained hidden. Tsushima continued making small talk, and Toki hadn't let go of Naruto. On top of that, conversations from random civilians filled the air and invaded her eardrums, along with a harsh gust of wind that made her cross her arms tightly. I hate being outside. Sadly for Yakumo, the crowd only increased in size at their destination. A ramen stand usually consisting of steady business, today seemed like a second grand opening. Not only had every stall been occupied, but the customers' numbers far exceeded the amount of seats. So much that the area was overwhelmed with consumers, and many ate outside standing with bowl in hand. Staying near the group, Yakumo focused on her new instructor and tried drowning out so many loud noises. This is Ichiraku Ramen. My favorite place to eat since I was little, Naruto grinned. Of everywhere in the village, this was easily one of the locations he missed the most. You must know the owners well then, Toki said. Yeah, they always treated me like an equal, even before I became a ninja. Naruto raised a hand to his forehead, blocking the sun. Don't remember it being this busy though. Wonder what's up. Perhaps some kind of special? Tsushima wondered. Let's find out. I'd like to meet these people from your childhood. Sure. Hands still held, they walked together with the other pair following closely. With each approaching step, Yakumo's nervousness and anxiety grew to the point of visibly shaking. Are you all right, Yakumo-san? Tsushima asked kindly. Anything I can do to help? Naruto and Toki turned around. I'm sorry, I've never been good with crowds. She couldn't help hugging herself tightly. She wanted Naruto to feel impressed, yet her actions constantly seemed pitiful. God, this is so embarrassing. I should have seen this coming. Naruto's other hand was placed under his chin before reaching out to her. Don't worry, I got you covered. Grab onto me if you want. I won't let ya go. She took his offer without hesitation, wrapping both arms around his. Yakumo looked away in the process, hiding her blush from the other woman. Toki narrowed her eyes at the exchange. Something wasn't right here. The tall girl clearly had issues and Naruto was her teacher. His quick aid made sense but still, she subconsciously squeezed Naruto's hand with extra force. Ow. Naruto winced. I'm sorry Naruto. Someone bumped into me. She lied smoothly. Not a skill she held with pride, but one with its uses. That's all right. There are a bunch of people here, aren't there? He looked around. The number of others only increased further as they went inside. Customers stood nearly everywhere, and they'd been walking by the line for new orders before Yakumo displayed any problems. Behind the counter it seemed extra help had been hired during his 3-year absence. 2 unfamiliar men tried to keep up with orders but seemed to fumble around on the most basic tasks. A smile formed when Ayame-ne-chan gave them hell. In between orders, Tucci looked up at the next customer and noticed his number 1 ramen buyer nearby. Naruto? That you? I barely even recognized you. Hey, good to see you too, old man. He grinned. Ayame mimicked his gesture and waved at him before berating her coworkers again. Toki smiled at the man. He seemed like a good person, one with a constant smile that had no trouble guiding Naruto in the right direction. Yakumo scooted a little closer to her new teacher. At Naruto's name, another female employee dropped a bowl in shock, shattering the object and leaving noodles and beef scattered on the floor. Ran. Pay attention. We called you in to help serve this new recipe to the customers, not the floor. Tucci hollered. Hopefully her error was a one-time thing today. Everyone made mistakes, but he expected that sort of constant idiocy from Matsu and Nishi, not Ran. Naruto raised an eyebrow. That's weird. I don't remember another girl working here, but she does look familiar though. I'm probably just mixing things up. My sincerest apologies Tucci-san. Ran restarted her order, ignoring Naruto's presence. For now. She would have to tell Sasama and Fuki about his return. The women at his side only upped its importance, for Sasama's sake much more than her own. She sighed, thinking of another personal matter. Hopefully this rush would end and she could return home. Class at the academy would finish soon, and she never liked it when Fuki came back to an empty apartment. It's good to see you back. Sorry, but as you can see we can't give you a big welcome right now. Come back later for a bowl on the house like old times. Bring your girlfriend too. The more the merrier. Tucci purposely refrained from guessing which girl held the title. Both women smiled triumphantly. Huh? Naruto's eyes went downward, noticing how their positions would look to anyone else. Those same eyes widened. Whoa there, Toki's just being friendly and Yakumo's my student. It's not like that. Both women frowned disappointedly. Whatever you say Naruto, Tucci chuckled, attention refocusing on someone's order. Head down, no one noticed Ran's smile. Sorry about that. I hope he didn't upset you guys. That's quite alright, Toki replied. I didn't bother me at all. Yakumo nodded. I feel the same. As a customer retrieved his order, he nearly knocked into Yakumo on the way back. Sorry about that. It's cool. Naruto nodded at his apology. Guess we'll have to take the old man on his offer. Come on, I know some other places to show you. A couple hours had passed since their trip to Ichiraku. After a few less attractive locations such as the hospital and the cemetery, a lengthy walk around the village put them atop of Konoha's most representative landmark. A mountain of stone, the faces of Konoha's most important leader throughout the years had been carved into it. Villagers only needed to look up for a sense of protection and remembrance of their Hokage. It's such a nice view, Toki gasped in awe. Nearly the entire village was visible from their vantage point. The Hokage's office was easily recognizable, but even places like that little ramen stand could be found. To see this with Naruto at her side felt like a dream come true. Away from the crowds, Yakumo's reason for holding Naruto diminished and she returned to walking near Tsushima. She'd never been to the Hokage monument before, but standing there now made her have a little regret. Toki is right. It's beautiful. You bet it is. This is what we call the Hokage monument. It's our tribute to the Hokage, the strongest in the village who wouldn't hesitate to put their precious people above themselves. One day, my face will be carved in too. Becoming Hokage has always been my dream. Yakumo stared at Naruto. Much like her own goal of recovering the Kurama clan's prestige, Naruto had a driving force that pushed to excel to new heights. There was something to learn, something she felt was equally important to Kurenai-sensei's matchmaking. Naruto never gives up, right? I have to emulate that or I'll never make it. Especially with this body. I've no doubt you can accomplish that, Naruto. Beaming, Toki leaned her head on his shoulder. Naruto shrugged at her action, but paid it no mind. Wow. Bird Country's culture sure doesn't bother with personal space, does it? I don't even remember it being that way. Weird. The group stayed put until the sun began to set, enjoying the lovely scene. With class dismissed hours ago, Amino Iruka and his assistant sat in his empty classroom grading papers. This year's Brad batch was a lot of fun, from loud troublemakers to brilliant schemers to quiet girls like Fuki to keep them in line. Their ninja abilities were only subpar, but they had far more skill in making him laugh. The door opened, and in came his favorite student of them all. "Yo! Iruka-sensei." A voice he'd never forget. Iruka quickly looked up. "Naruto? I didn't know you were back." The blonde shrimp had grown a lot. If Iruka guessed, he'd probably gotten taller than Sakura. Naruto wasn't alone, strolling in with some unusual company. Was he holding hands with a princess? And what was Kurama Yakumo doing here? Last he heard from Konohamaru, his totally awesome Ne-chan tended to stay indoors. "Yeah, I got back earlier today." His unoccupied arm flexed. "You should see how strong I've gotten." Iruka chuckled. "I wouldn't doubt that for a second, especially since you were training with Jiraiya-sama." "Who is this Naruto?" Toki asked gently. He smacked his forehead. "Oh, right. Everyone, this is Iruka-sensei, my teacher at the academy." His features softened, an earnest smile slowly spreading across his face. "Before anyone else, he was the first person in the world to acknowledge my existence." Toki could easily see the affection. Where Tucci had importance in Naruto's childhood, it paled in comparison to the man facing her. "Iruka-san, it's a pleasure to meet you. I am Toki, the feudal country of Bird Country, and this is Chishima, one of my closest friends." The brunette nodded. "Nice to meet you." Eyes nearly bulging out of their socket, Iruka gripped his desk tightly. A feudal lord. How odd. If it took as long as entering the academy for someone to acknowledge him, how was his life earlier? Yakumo's thoughts took on a more serious turn. She thought back to his understanding of her situation with the Edo monster. Am I reading too much into this, or is there some kind of connection? I haven't forgotten how some of his neighbors turned away from him. Has he been going through that his entire life? Yes, Toki said. All thanks to Naruto. He gave me the courage for this job. Without him, my country would be facing much harder times now. So, he looked at their hands. Naruto is with a feudal lord. He always believed greatness lied in store for the person he saw as a little brother, but to return after training with Jiraiya-sama and in some kind of relationship with a feudal lord at his age far exceeded anything he possibly imagined. He felt a hand on his shoulder. Relax, Iruka. I'm sure Naruto-kun will have a valid explanation. A deep breath taken and Iruka calmed down. Yeah, you're right. Thanks, Tsubaki. Tsubaki Ne-chan works at the school now? I knew you were familiar, Naruto proudly exclaimed, pointing a finger at the black-haired woman at his teacher's side. Don't point like that, Naruto. It's rude, Toki admonished. It is? He looked at his hand. Sorry about that. That's quite alright, Naruto-kun. Tsubaki gave a smile in his direction. To answer your question, I've been working alongside Iruka for nearly a year now. Helping the children is so much more rewarding than I could have imagined. Oh, so you're an assistant like, Naruto's big mouth couldn't stop itself from opening. Like Mizuki, yes. I thought it was an appropriate part of my atonement. She closed her eyes momentarily before reopening them. And a good job you've done. Iruka approved quickly, eager to change the subject. Besides, other issues needed discussion. He looked after Naruto long before Kakashi and Jiraiya. He felt an obligation to ensure Toki only had good intentions with him. But how about you guys? Where did you meet? It was on a mission to protect Bird Country from a ghost, only it turned out the people hiring us were bad guys trying to use us to help them take over. Naruto shook his head, slightly annoyed at being played by people like Moso, even if the traitor was brought to justice. In hindsight, I'm slightly grateful to the Watari. Despite the atrocities committed, without his request for Konoha's aid, I'd have never met you. She peered down at him, eyes almost sparkling with adoration. Yakumo grit her teeth. Naruto blushed a little. Hey, thanks. Anyway, Toki came to visit and asked me to help her see around the village. He then gestured to the only person seemingly out of place. And since Yakumo's my student now, I asked her to come along and Toki's cool with it so everyone wins. Neither of them seemed to agree with the last statement. Tsubaki noted. Ah, now I understand, Iruka said. Naruto teaching was yet another he hadn't expected, at least not so soon. Ya know, if you ever need any advice on instructing, well, you know where to find me. But back to your mission. Have you taken her to Ichiraku's yet? We could have a bowl there, just like old times. That's probably the best way we can show someone around Konoha. Teacher and student shared a chuckle there. I hear that. Sadly, we checked earlier and they're really busy. Well, that's too bad. Speaking of food, he looked at Tsubaki. Weren't you about to grab something to eat? She nodded. Why don't you come with us? You don't mind, do you, Toki? Naruto eagerly interjected. Not at all. I welcome the company, she replied. Might as well. I don't think Naruto would feel happy if I refuse. Besides, my plan of alone time is already doomed thanks to his student. Are you sure? Tsubaki asked. I don't mean to impose, and you are technically on a mission. If Naruto approves, then so do I, Toki said. Go on. Haruka urged. I can handle the rest of this paperwork on my own. Have the rest of the evening off. Naruto and I can always get a bowl another day. I'm holding you to that, Haruka-sensei. Good, he laughed. I wouldn't have it any other way. Very well. Thank you very much. Tsubaki stood up and bowed. Thank goodness for teachers. With Tsubaki around, hopefully Toki will back down some. Yakumo's smile got a little larger. Ah, the wonders of cockblocking. A fast trip to Ichiraku showed its crowd had only increased, so they immediately began the pursuit of other restaurants. Their second choice Yakiniku-Q shared a similar fate. Apparently an Akamichi eating contest was happening within alongside the usual dinner rush. Naruto noticed many among the clan gorging heavily and the males of Team Asuma cheering on Choji as he devoured another beef tongue like a boss. With that out, the dango shop became their next option, but ended up rejected from a close democratic vote. Naruto and Toki voted in favor while the other three said otherwise, the feudal lord glaring at Shishima for his unintentional betrayal. The fact that Naruto let go of her hand to cast his vote didn't help matters in the slightest. What's this place? Toki asked, gazing at a wooden building with windows on the side and red curtains at the entrance. A sign at the top said, Hashirama's Sanctuary. That's the Hashirama Sanctuary, named in honor of our Shodai Hokage. It's an old establishment, but still pretty popular. Tsubaki informed her. As an adult that didn't leave the village for 3 years, the teaching assistant proved herself a far better tour guide than Naruto, easily pointing out all sorts of common and obscure locations. Naruto and Yakumo found themselves learning as well. Come to think of it, I've never actually been here before. Naruto looked at the place in awe, wondering what they offered. How about we give it a try? Shishima asked. Sounds good, Toki said. No one felt the urge to start up another vote. Curtains pushed aside, they noticed a short line waiting for service. At the back, 2 girls turned around as Naruto and company entered. The hair's colors of pink and orange were all Naruto required to make an identification. Holy crap, Sakura! And, Sasama-chan! Naruto exclaimed. Naruto? Naruto-san? Both girls asked simultaneously. Did you say Naruto? Before anything else, the group looked past Sasama and Sakura at the girl behind them. Blonde hair and blue eyes, she wore a soft pink robe with red spots and brown pants, all in sizes much larger than the other girls present. Unlike Hokuto, a fat Ino clone was rather hard to forget. Fukuheim too? Wasn't expecting to run into you here. You're Naruto, right? Uzumaki Naruto? She asked, undisguised hope in her voice. Squeezing past the other 2 girls, she approached him. Yeah, I'm kinda surprised you actually remember me. Naruto rubbed the back of his head. The mission aiding her had been short, and they hadn't parted on the kindest note. Don't be silly, of course I remember. She smiled. And now an actual princess? Yakumo thought, crestfallen. Fuck my life. Naruto's thoughts were more surprised than morbid. Okay, this makes what? Like 7 girls I met since Ero Sennin was preparing for the trip that I've run into? All in less than a day. This is just getting weird. Thanks for watching. Also remember to subscribe and like this video. See you in the next video.